All the participants are requested to turn off their cameras and microphones, please.
समृद्धि है ना दीदी ऑफ करने के लिए ऑप्शन
Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to the Management Conclave on Environmental Social Governance as a Value Creator for Indian Ecosystem, organized by Banarsidas Chandiwala Institute of Professional Studies. I, Samriddhi, alongside me is my co-host Ishita. We are thrilled to be your anchors for this insightful event. We welcome our director ma'am, Dr. Aparna Mishra, our chief guest, Sri Vipul Gupta sir, and all the dignitaries present here.
That's right, Samriddhi. Today, we have a power-packed schedule lined up, filled with esteemed speakers and thought-provoking discussions on the significance of environmental social governance as a value creator. So, without a further ado, let's begin the inaugural session. To commence this event on an auspicious note, we will begin with the traditional Saraswati Mantra. Now, we would like to invite Dr. Aparna Mishra, the director of Banarsidas Chandiwala Institute of Professional Studies, to deliver the welcome address.
Thank you so much, Ishita. Honorable Chief Guest, Mr. Gokul Pandian, Director E&Y. Respected Vice Chairman, Sir, Shri Vipul Gupta ji. Respected keynote speaker, Ms. Shilpa Verma, Senior Vice President and Head Compliance, Niva Vopa Health Insurance Company. Our dignitaries and panelists, Professor Rajeshwari Malik, UN Volunteer and STG Advocate, Mr. Manoj Kumar Shah, Head ESG and Sustainability, Azura Power India, Dr. Aman Gupta, National Head Corporate Regulatory and Scientific Affairs, Yum Brands India, Ms. Aruna Pandey, Independent Consultant, Sustainability and Regeneration, esteemed delegates present from different parts of country, my fellow colleagues, live viewers on YouTube channel, Dear students, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to all of you at this prestigious management conclave on environmental social governance as a value creator for Indian ecosystem. I'm honored to stand before you as the director of this esteemed institution and delivering the welcome address to the distinguished gathering. In recent years, we have witnessed a paradigm shift in the way businesses operate and the expectations of society has from them. The concept of environmental social governance or ESG has emerged as a powerful framework and that not only promotes sustainable practices but also recognizes the crucial role businesses play in addressing environmental and social challenges. ESG provides a comprehensive framework that encourages companies to assess their environmental impact, embrace social responsibility, and adopt sound corporate governance practices. By integrating ESG principles into their operations, organizations can reduce their carbon footprints, mitigate risks, enhance stakeholders' trust, and ultimately drive long term value creation. I would like to begin this interesting deliberation with few hardcore facts recently published at different global platforms. A survey by Morgan Stanley found that 85% of individual investors in United States are interested in sustainable investing and 59% of investors globally consider ESG factors important when they are making investment decisions. KPMG found that 80% of the world's 250 largest companies now report on their ESG performance. The percentage of S&P 500 companies publishing sustainable reports increased from 20% in 2011 to 90% in 2021 globally. Multiple academic research studies have shown a positive correlation between strong ESG performance and financial performance. A meta-analysis of over 2,000 studies by Friday, Bush, and Besson found that 90% of these studies demonstrated a positive correlation between ESG and financial performance of the company, while only 10% showed a neutral or negative relationship. A study by Harvard Business School found that companies with good ESG performance had a lower cost of debt, suggesting that lenders perceive them as less risky. The World Economic Forum's Global Risk Report consistently identifies environmental and social risk as one of the most significant threats to global economic stability. A survey by Cone Communication revealed that 76% of millennials consider a company's social and environmental commitments when they decide where to work. Governments around the world are increasingly implementing ESG related regulations. The European Union's Sustainable Financial Disclosure Regulation requires financial institutions to disclose how they integrate sustainability factors into their investment decisions, and similar regulatory developments have been witnessed in other regions as well. The United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals provide a framework for addressing global challenges and serve as a guide for organizations to align their ESG efforts. ESG has become a catalyst for change, steering organizations towards a more holistic development and approach to value creation. Today, we are here to explore how ESG can be leveraged as a value creator, especially or specifically for the Indian ecosystem. Several factors contribute to the significance of ESG in Indian context. India faces numerous environmental challenges, including air, water pollution, deforestation, waste management, climate changes, etc. The Indian government has taken steps to address environmental and social concerns through various policies and regulatory frameworks. Initiatives such as National Action Plan or Climate Change, the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, and the Corporate Social Responsibility Mandate are such examples which have created a foundation for sustainable development and ESG integration. The investors' focus has led to a greater emphasis on ESG reporting and disclosure in India nowadays. Society at large, including consumers, employees, communities, and civil society organizations, expect business to operate responsibly and contribute positively to the environment and the society. Companies that align with these expectations can build trust, enhance their reputation, and attract talent. ESG considerations are increasingly integrated into government and governance frameworks, ensuring that the interests of all stakeholders are adequately addressed. Indian companies are recognizing the importance of transparent and standardized ESG reporting. Recently, SEBI has mandated the top 1,000 listed companies to disclose their ESG related activities in their annual report. India has also witnessed the emergence of sustainable financial initiatives such as green bonds and sustainability linked loans. We all can validate these changes in recent approach. We have seen encouraging steps being taken by Indian businesses and policymakers in this direction. However, there is still much ground to cover. There are challenges ahead, such as resource constraints, capacity building requirements, and the need for robust ESG frameworks and standards. Continued collaboration between the government, business, academia, and civil society is crucial to address these challenges and foster a sustainable ecosystem in India. This conclave serves as a platform for industry leaders, academicians, and policymakers to engage in meaningful discussions, share insights, and collectively chart a path forward. Through this course of this conclave, we'll delve into various dimensions of ESG and explore how it can shape our business, economy, and society. We have an exciting lineup of speakers and panel discussions that will provide valuable perspective on ESG implementation, regulatory frameworks, investors' expectations, and the potential for innovations and collaborations in future. I urge all of you to actively participate, exchange ideas, and network with fellow professionals throughout this conclave. Let us harness our collective knowledge and expertise to develop actionable strategies that will make ESG a true value creator for the Indian ecosystem. In conclusion, I'm confident that this management conclave will serve as a catalyst for change, inspiring all of us to embrace ESG principles and work towards a sustainable future. Together, let's strive to create an Indian ecosystem that thrives on environmental stewardship, social responsibility, and exemplary corporate governance. Let me take this opportunity to extend a very heartfelt gratitude to our Vice Chairman, sir, for extending his guidance and unconditional support for the effective conduct of this event. Thank you so very much, sir, for blessing us with your benign presence today. And we are really thankful for sharing your words of wisdom to make this event a success for all of us. Last but not the least, I extend once again my heartfelt gratitude to all our speakers, also to the organizing team and volunteers who have worked tirelessly to make this event a reality. Your unwavering commitment to promoting sustainable practices is truly commendable. Thank you so very much, and I wish everyone a fruitful and enlightening conclave ahead. All the best. Thank you so very much. Over to you, Ishita.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your words.
वो तो बंद हो गई थी ना, वो उसने तोड़ दी थी उस नंबर से.
Now, moving forward, we are honored to have with us today Shri Vipul Gupta ji, Vice Chairman of Banasidas Chandiwala Seva Samarak Trust Society. We request him to bless us with his words of wisdom. Over to you, sir.
Sir, please unmute yourself.
Yeah. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. You are audible, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, what an honor it is to be with you all on occasion of Annual General Conclave of BCIPS on ESG as a value creator for Indian ecosystem. Good morning, our esteemed chief guest, Mr. Gokul Pandyan, guest of honor, Mr. Sandeep Srivastava, keynote speaker, Ms. Shilpa Verma, and our panel moderator, Dr. Rajeshwari Dhaiya, our panelist, Mr. Manoj Kumar Shah, Mr. Rambuj Mishra, Dr. Aman Gupta, Ms. Jayata Sharma, Ms. Aruna Pandey. And a word of special thanks to our director, Dr. Parna Mishra, Mr. Jayant Sanyal, and the team of BCIPS who have brought the stellar guests and speakers together for this emerging, eminent and imminent topic. Initially, study of business ethics appeared to be far-fetched, as business and ethics appeared to be antitheses of each other, till 2009 when Satyam computer scam emerged close to all of us in India. But as we are evolving, as businesses are evolving or degenerating, we've started talking of governance to environmental and social issues. The importance has become notable with the insistence of regulators that independent directors should play an active role in governance and not to merely be the cronies of the promoters. So this is definitely a very important and pressing issue of our time. The need to protect our planet and ensure its survival for future generation, where we can do business, or we study business, or we continue to be there on the planet. And as a management institute, this appears to be an opportunity to train our students on the subject who can take up such position in their career. And the challenge we face today are daunting, but we must remember that each one of us can make a difference. Together, we have the power to create real change, leaving behind us legacy. With this, I would request the MC of the day to take it forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your kind words. Moving forward, it is indeed a privilege to have the chief guest, Mr. Gokul Pandyan, Director of Enrist and Young, EY, has 18 plus years of work experience in ESG, climate change and decarbonization. He has completed his education from IIM Bangalore and Anna University. Let's give him a warm round of applause as he shares his insights in the inaugural session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Samriddhi. Dr. Aparna Mishra, Director, BCIPS, Shri Vipul Gupta, Vice Chairman, SBC, SSTS, Mr. Sandeep Srivastav, Head ESG and Ever Enviro Resource Management Private Limited, Ms. Shilpa Verma, Senior Vice President and Head, Compliance, Ethical Conduct and ESG, Niva Bupa Health Insurance Company Limited, and Dr. Shamsher Singh, and the other panelists, distinguished speakers, and the participants. So I would like to thank the organizing committee of BCIPS to invite me to the management conclave on ESG, which is the most important topic. I'm really privileged to be part of this event, and I'm happy to share my thoughts. So, Dr. Aparna Mishra has actually highlighted about the major aspects of ESG. I will take a little bit more depth to give you a perspective what is ESG is all about, and then to give preamble about the actions, the reasons, as well as the next steps. So we all know the main goal of any business is to create and deliver products and services that meets the needs of the customers. So ESG is such a framework that helps the stakeholders understand how an organization is managing its risk and opportunities related to environment, social, and governance. So if you look at really ESG, as we have been discussing, ESG is a topic which is where the investors are really demanding, customers are expecting, shareholders rely upon, and the employees are actually valuing. If you look at little more depth, ESG is basically into environment, social, and governance. So environment relates to responsible resource management. So it highlights about an organization taking a decarbonization pathway, thereby managing the water, waste, energy, resources, raw materials, and protecting the biodiversity, and of course making the optimum use of everything. That encompasses primarily from the environment standpoint. If you look at from the social, so social is primarily focusing around caring for the people and communities and empowering the communities, human capital development, workforce breakdown and gender, human rights assessment, diversity, and integrity within the organization. So governance, as the chairman spoke about, it's all about how we operate the business fairly and ethically. So such as like corporate transparency, having the proper risk management framework, having all systems and procedures to run the business. We have discussed about the importance of growing awareness in ESG. I would like to quote some instances from the World Economic Forum report on risks. If you look at the World Economic Forum 2022 report, they have identified almost 37 risks which are very crucial for the world, and out of that, the top 5 risks, if you really look at it, it talks about the climate action failure, the social and social crisis on because of the COVID. Then it also highlights about the digital inequality and the economic crisis that we are really looking at, and of course the kind of geopolitical scenario. And if you look at the top 5 risks, two of them, one is a climate action failure and the social cohesion because of the COVID-19. These two are actually coming as top 2 risks. And if you look at going forward also, the 5 to 10 years, the top 5 risks are all going to come from the climate action failure. You can also see the recent example where even you must be seeing in the news that there is a forest fire which has been hitting the Canadian country, as well as it's also started hitting the US and US, especially the northern part of the US. Right? It's all actually because of the extreme weather, and there's a climate action failure. It's not that okay, only we are looking at the risks and opportunity, but risks basically, and government, as we have actually highlighted by Dr. Mishra, is that there are a lot of government activities which has already been started taking place, and some of them I would put across here is that US rejoined the Paris Agreement, and that creates a lot of pressure on the companies to look for reduction in carbon reduction opportunities. And many countries have taken something called carbon border adjustment mechanism. The carbon border adjustment mechanism is basically they would like to assess what is the carbon that is actually coming into the country through the product carbon footprint, right? So that is being very that's getting shape. I would say this is also going to hit from October 2023, and it's going to be mandated from Jan 2026 for the Europe, and probably similar time it's going to be there applicable from US also. And climate related financial disclosures have taken shape. Many countries have actually mandated the reporting of that. And over and above, we also spoke about various subsidy schemes and sustainable finance programs, etc. So if you look at from the India standpoint, India also have committed, as you all know, that Panchamrit to deal with climate change. So India have committed for a net zero by 2070, thereby fossil fuel energy capacity of 500 gigawatt by 2030, and it will also meet its energy requirements, 50% of it from energy from the renewable energy, right? And then we also looked at almost like 1.5 to 2 billion tons of CO2 sink through afforestation programs. So we also have committed globally over a nationally determined contribution that India will reduce the carbon intensity of the economy by less than 45% below 2005 levels. It means that we planned or we aimed to achieve the carbon intensity reduction firmly and committed to the world. And of course, we are on the path to move towards that. And we spoke about the BRR and the BRSR, which is another important activity which India has actually taken up a shape. Right? Like that, there are so many, actions India has taken. Some of them I would also mention is that one, all the financial institution will be publishing its climate risks of the portfolio. Basically, they would assess the carbon emissions of the portfolio, and then they will be publishing it. This is going to get mandated very soon. This is being launched by the RBI of India. way. Similar to the results what we have been already said. So just one different result, I would say that, in our investor survey, 74% of the investors, they are more likely now to divest if the company has a poor ESG performance. Right. So that's the very different from rest of the consumers and the corporates. They are all now started taking action towards ESG. And I also would like to highlight something about the rating agencies and platforms. Now, the performance, I would say the non-financial performance of the ESG have been monitored by various rating agencies such as Carbon Disclosure Project, Morgan Stanley Composite Index, Sustainalytics, DJSI. There are many of them out there. All of them are actually started monitoring it. Every company will be, expected to publish their financial and the non-financial disclosures. And basis the publication of the non-financial disclosures and the performance of the company, the rating of that company will be given. For example, the Carbon Disclosure Project, which primarily focuses on carbon, water, and forest. If you look at, they give a rating from D to A, D being the worst and A being the best. So it depends upon the disclosure as well as the performance. Similarly, Morgan Stanley Composite Index also talks about E, S, and G. So it also starts about triple D to triple A. So triple A being the best. So if you look at every rating agencies, they will be evaluating a company on more than, say, 1,000 to 1,500 parameters, and they look at their press communication and then investor presentations, and then every news article which talks about the sustainable performance of the company will be evaluated, and accordingly their results will be published. So it's important for all the corporates to focus on their not only the disclosure but also the performance year on year, so that they will be able to get a better ratings. Advantage of better ratings, we all know that, Tess also spoke about, is that you'll be able to get a better access to capital, talent attraction, and interest subvention on the loan. Of course, the brand value improvement and market capitalization. Even there was one report which MSCI highlighted about, where the ESG India leaders as well as the India leaders, there is a difference of almost like 2 to 3% on the overall market cap as well, right? So that's the prominent importance, I would say, from the ESG standpoint. So how do the corporates needs to approach the ESG standpoint? That's very important. As we all, this one point which was highlighted about in the earlier presentation, in the earlier discussion, is that capacity building workshops. This earlier, we used to have some classroom trainings and all of that. Now it's important that we need to that every corporate needs to look at the tiered approach of the capacity building program, right from the top level to the mid level to the bottom level. It is important to embed sustainability related aspects across the organization. So capacity building workshops is going to be a very crucial one. Second, every company needs to form a core team of sustainability professionals to address the multifunctional requirements. It's not that only environment department is going to look at, or maybe only HR department is going to look at, or only the company secretary department is going to look at. It's going to be an, I would say, a fence across all the departments. They need to work together. It's like a string of pearls, that each and every pearl is actually important, so that a nice garland will be formed. So that's the core team's requirement. So the core team needs to be formed, and the management at the top level need to build the ESG strategy. So ESG strategy, we all, like any other strategy, it needs to have a clear-cut vision, what exactly you would like to achieve over a period of time, to say 5 to 10 years down the line, and build proper governance framework, maybe a 2-tier or a 3-tier governance framework, and develop policies. It's important that every company needs to develop a policy around all the ESG related requirements, and of course put it in the public domain as well. That's more important, because keeping the policy within us is not going to help anyone. If the moment the policies are being public, then obviously the expectation is that that policy will get rolled out through a proper management systems, and that management systems further collect the data and assess the data and ensure whatever the KPIs and goals and targets that we set within the organization is being met, right? And that's the purpose of the overall strategy. And the third, like once we built the strategy, is important, we also need to implement the strategy. So for strategy implementation, the governance framework along with its roles and responsibilities will be helpful for the organization to undertake the proper implementation steps to ensure every lever that has been identified has been implemented and the progress of every KPI has been measured so that the company can achieve the overall goal and the targets which is being set for the company. Right. So this is how a company would look at. I would say three-pronged strategy. The first strategy is going to be forming a core team and conducting a capacity building program. Build an ESG strategy containing the vision, governance framework, policies, management systems, processes, setting up goals and targets. And the third, implementing it to a well-defined roadmap, constantly benchmarking the performance and aligning with the emerging requirements. So I would like to end my speech by quoting Mahatma Gandhi. What Mr. Mahatma Gandhi said is that we should not look upon the natural resources, water, air, and land as an inheritance from our forefathers. However, consider them to be the loan given by our next generation. So what we today determines how our future will be. Jai Hind. Thank you so much for giving the opportunity and over to the anchors.
Thank you so much, sir, for sparing your time and presenting such rich and fruitful information to us. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Our next speaker, Mr. Sandeep Srivastava, Head of ESG at Ever Enviro Resource Management Private Limited, possessing over 30 years of rich experience working with government and industry on several subjects on environment, health and safety, climate change, and corporate sustainability, has completed his master's in environmental engineering and bachelor's in civil engineering. He will now grace us with his valuable thoughts as the guest of honor. It seems that due to some technical issues, sir is not able to join us. In the meantime, let's move on to our next speaker. We will be privileged to have with us Ms. Shilpa Verma, Senior Vice President and Head of Compliance, Ethical Conduct and ESG at Niva Bhupa Health Insurance Company Limited. She has over 18 years of rich experience into diverse internal audits, risk management, compliance, and governance assignments. She has completed her studies from Delhi University and IIM Ahmedabad. Let's eagerly listen to her keynote address. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Firstly, I would like to thank the management of the Institute to invite me, and it indeed is a privilege to be here sharing thoughts around the most talked about topic, ESG, with the faculty and the Gen Z. As in, why I say Gen Z categorically, because we know that there's so much to learn from them. While they are looking forward to learn more and more, we also have lots to learn from you. So hence, I look forward to a very interactive discussion session here. So I would like to present a few slides. I hope I have.
Yes, ma'am, you can.
Are these slides visible?
Yes, ma'am, they are.
Okay. All right. So first, I'd like to talk about that while the subject sounds very interesting, ESG, but when did this discussion come up majorly? When was it popularly used for the first time? This was way back in 2004 when UN had invited a joint initiative from financial institutions. There was a report which was issued by these financial institutions jointly, Who Cares Wins. And the name itself gives a message. Who Cares Wins gives us a message that yes, we have to care about a lot of common causes, concerns, which need immediate attention. So hence ESG became a discussion point and it started picking up the popularity across. Now we know that the world we live in today faces numerous environmental, social challenges, something like climate change, biodiversity loss, pollution, resource depletion. These are a few pressing issues which need urgent attention. So I'll talk about some key study, the research points, which might just trigger and give you some thoughts around why is it so important, why organizations, why the industry, why the corporate world has been talking about ESG. while Dr. Aparna and Gokul have already mentioned about few research findings, I would have some more to add, something around environmental concern. So greenhouse gases in the atmosphere have risen to record levels not seen in 3 million years. And about two-thirds of greenhouse gas emissions is largely the product of burning fossil fuels. So when we say greenhouse gases, so these are the carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, ozone emissions that we're talking about. We used to talk about little greenhouse gas makes Earth too cold. But we also know too much of greenhouse gas emissions will make the Earth warmer. And in last century, we humans have burned coal, oil, gasoline in our cars, trucks, planes, trains, power plants, and factories so much that we have reached that warning, that alarming limit, which says that now the global temperature cannot rise beyond, as in we shouldn't let the global temperature rise beyond 1.5 degrees. And when we say this, that means that we have to cut down our greenhouse gas emissions by half till 2030. So that's a urgent need. So that's the need of the hour. When we talk about 99% of the world's population breathes polluted air. 4.2 million people die prematurely every year from exposure to outdoor air pollution. Over 2 billion people already live in areas subject to water stress. An estimated 80% of all industrial and municipal wastewater, for example, is released into the environment without prior treatment. So these are some alarming environmental concerns. Talking about some social concerns. So 7% of the world's population will be in extreme poverty by 2030. We talk about asset inequality in asset distribution. 1% of population will own two-thirds of world's asset, and 99% would own one-third of asset in the world. In 2020, women represented nearly 45% of global employment losses. Why are we talking about the women ratio here? When it is 45%, we are saying that, okay, fine, 55% of men also had employment loss. But this is not the hiring ratio. This is not the employment ratio. Then why is this the employment loss ratio? The share of women hired into leadership roles has been very steady. It is not increasing at a good pace. We were at 33.3% in 2016, and we have reached just 36.9% in 2022. Roughly one in five people have experienced discrimination on at least one of the grounds prohibited under international human rights law, such as ethnicity, age, sex, disability, religion, and sexual orientation. So these social concerns are also equally important as much as we talk about the environment concerns. Governance concerns. While there are regulators who have been very, very stringent around the governance mechanisms, the frameworks for the companies from very beginning. But now we have some facts to understand that yes, it is still an alarming situation for us. Corruption, bribery, theft, and tax evasion cost around $1.26 trillion for developing countries each year. We'll talk about the facts only for one quarter for the next one. They say that during third quarter of 2022, approximately 15 million data records were exposed worldwide through data breaches. And then the average cost of a data breach varied across sectors, with highest healthcare cost in healthcare industry. So I represent here a health insurance company. I work for Niva Bupa Health Insurance Company, which is formerly known as Max Bupa Health Insurance Company. And I'll give you a lot of examples around service industry, healthcare, which you'll be able to relate to. So these are a few questions that we need to answer as a stakeholder, as a citizen, as an employee, as a policy holder. So when I say health insurance industry, I become a policy holder because I own a policy with the company, but I'll be concerned about certain things. That yes, whether the company is transparent, is fair. As an employee, I would like to know that whether the company is honest enough in their business practices. As an investor, I would like to know that. From an environment perspective, I would like to understand what impact does a company have on environment, and the other way around. How could environment risk affect the future of a business in its respective industry? So if we talk about health insurance industry, we do not impact the environment directly because we do not have a manufacturing setup. We do not have factories, but there is an indirect impact. How do I say, like, how would we relate to this? Indirect impact would be how is the environment impacting the business. So sorry, there's a reverse impact. When we say environment impacting the business, because if, for example, with the increasing alarming situation in the environment, with the environment risk, there are calamities. This will impact the health and increase the claims. With the increase in claims, it also impacts our financial position in the market. It impacts the positioning and stability of the company. And hence, each stakeholder is equally concerned. So there is a reverse impact that we need to evaluate in parallel. And yes, as a stakeholder, we would also like to understand that if the company or organization is doing something to negate its negative impacts on the environment. Now, from a social perspective, does the company promote diversity, equity, fairness for their employees, for the community? Is it doing something for the society, or is it just targeting towards numbers? The question is that these three questions have an answer that yes, there has to be some step towards it. So that's where we link back to environment, social, and governance. Gokul has already given a background on these and made you understand that what exactly is the crux of environment, social, governance. I'll touch upon it very quickly. So environmental criteria we spoke about, we discussed that yes, company, whatever energy we consume as a company, that would be one of the parameters, criterias to evaluate our environmental impact, the waste that we discharge, the resources that we consume. So we can talk about paper consumption, plastic consumption, water consumption, energy consumption. These all are the things that we need to evaluate when we are measuring our environmental impact. Social criteria. When it comes to social criteria, who are our stakeholders? We talk about the stakeholders, internal and external stakeholders. Internal stakeholders can be employees. External stakeholders would be our like service providers, customers, who are the policy holders, investors. So for all of them and the community, what are we doing? How are we giving back to the community? And governance, as we said, as I just mentioned, IRDAI, regulator of insurance industry, has very stringent policy guidelines around governance. We have been following that, but still now they have been more focused on governance and have also been questioning the companies around the environmental and social initiatives that the companies are taking. So when we say governance, there has to be very transparent policies, and there have to be disclosures. We have to have some internal controls and systems which are very clear, and there has to be a clear framework, reporting framework in place. So these are the three areas which cover all the factors which need to be looked upon by the company, by the organization. Major triggers, we have been talking about this, the increase and the rising expectation from all the stakeholders, competitive advantage, because everyone is doing that. Whoever does this more, takes more initiatives, definitely has an advantage in the market. We create a lot of value through this. Dr. Aparna talked about the value that a company creates in the market and overall by contributing back, giving back to the society. We respond to growing ESG regulations. Each regulator has been somewhere incorporating this requirement in their regulatory framework now. Growing demand of investors. Different facts have been quoted, research outcomes have been quoted by Dr. Aparna and Gokul. So I'll also quote one where recent research mentioned that approximately 70% of investors would like to fund only in those and would like to fund the companies which are focusing on ESG compliances, are reporting ESG compliances. And we talked about the concerns. we talk about the implementation strategy. As a company, what do I need to do? What exactly would bring that difference? And how do I implement this overall strategy of ESG? Because we keep talking about so many initiatives and the concerns that we see around, but how do we implement it? How do we bring that within the organization, integrated within the organization? So yes, this is a top-down approach. It has to be top-down messaging. So walking the talk instead of just talking. We can't just keep talking. As leaders, it starts from leadership. We have to set up those examples. We set those examples. So I stop using papers. I see other management members stop consuming papers and plastic bottles. We do not use any single-use plastic in the organization, in our offices. And we have reduced the consumption of tissue papers. We have removed a lot of dustbins and have those common dustbins in place so that that plastic thinner that is used in the dustbins is not required as much as it is required for individual dustbins. So we set those examples for our peers, for our colleagues in the organization. Now we have to identify some focus areas as an organization. The way we did it for our industry, for our company, which is like a service industry, we had identified a few areas like effective resource management, one which I talked about, energy, waste discharge, paper, plastic, and water consumption. These are the resources that we have to be mindful of because this impacts directly the environment. Another one is occupational health and safety programs. So we also organize health checkups for our employees. Employment relationships and working conditions. We ensure that there is a healthy working condition, as in working environment for our employees. We also conduct certain mental health awareness and other webinars and sessions for our colleagues, for all the employees. Employment, okay, we then community programs, not only internal but for the community. How are we giving back to the community? So we had done 200, we had organized 200 plus health camps for general public. It was not for our customers, it was not for our stakeholders, it was for general public that we did that. So that being in this industry, we are all the more concerned about health, and hence we think that is the best way to give it back to the society, contribute back towards the society. And we keep organizing such health camps so that health awareness is something which is like, I would say, becomes important around. It is not only at the stage of why I'm talking about health awareness is that one, it not only helps us to create that awareness in the society, and second, it also becomes one of the objective of the health insurance, the healthcare industry. So that is there. Then sustainable supplier management. So we urge our service providers, same time we have made this mandatory as part of the agreements. And then we also have some customer engagement and satisfaction initiatives where we have digitized their journey to make it much more simpler for them. And we keep taking feedback from them that how would it help, how is it helping them, how is the experience helping them. So these are certain focus areas that we have identified in our organization. Now, next step would be for us to identify the KPIs. When we say KPIs, it is the indicators. We set up some target towards it. And then we have to track those targets. How are we performing against those targets? And we report as per the different reporting frameworks, whatever is applicable on us. Lastly, I would like to touch upon the role of technology. When we integrate ESG with the overall organization framework and the objectives, technology plays a very vital role. So we talk about transitioning into net zero, where we have to monitor our carbon emissions or providing sustainable choices for the customers. We require technology support for such initiatives. Similarly, building systems that protect privacy and are fair, transparent, robust, and accessible. This it has to be done with the support of technology, leveraging the power of data analysis. While we need data for reporting purposes, monitoring and reporting purposes, this again cannot be done without the help of technology. That is there. And the improvements also require the support of technology. So that is all from my side. So if you have any questions, happy to take those questions.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your words of wisdom and insights. We are grateful to you for sparing the time for us and providing us with such an informative presentation.
No, I have a question from Ms. Shilpa.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I have a question from you. I would be very grateful, if you just mentioned that you've done away with the plastic liners from the dustbin. You've reduced the number of dustbins, right? Could you help us, identify all those things, what you've done to reduce, the factors which impact the environment? Of course, we cannot say that we are paperless office. We maximize the usage of paper, using both the sides. But like you said, can you give us all the pointers? I would really thank you for that. If you, Dr. Aparna will be in touch with you and you can help us out. Maybe we can implement few of them at least, to start with in first phase.
Sure, sir. Happy to do that. I can talk about top 3 initiatives that we have already taken. And maybe I can connect with Dr. Aparna later for many more, whatever we have been able to achieve. So if you talk about top 3, say no to single-use plastic was the first initiative, where we removed all the plastic water bottles from the office. Even if it is for visitors, we have those glass bottles and glasses to serve water. That is there. Second is reducing the paper consumption. So we have reduced paper consumption to up to 95% in last 2 years. One, thanks to COVID, God forbid, but then it contributed in a way that we realized that
बाकी क्वेश्चन जो दे
we
रखे हैं
are
ना
like
इसमें ये बच्चों को हमने असाइन किए थे उनको बोला क्वेश्चन पूछें वो.
Excuse me, Shamsher sir, kindly mute. I'm so sorry, ma'am. Please continue. I'm really sorry for this intervention.
Perfect, fine. So so I was talking about paper consumption. So we have reduced this paper consumption to up to 95%, by up to 95%. Now, how did we do this? In insurance and financial services sector, if you see, there are lot of statutory requirements where we require prints, the hard copies, which have to be given to the customer, be it a policy document, be it his credit card statement and NBFCs with banks. But the way we did it, we had sent across a request, a representation post COVID times, because pandemic times have taught us a lot. It's really made us realize that yes, we can be without hard copies. So that's where we had made this representation to the regulator, and regulators supported us on these initiatives. So we have also reduced the paper consumption on those fronts. Internally, as an organization, be it any area, be it for the interviews or be it any other reviews, we tried using digital copies. So that is one. Tissue papers. So we have been closely monitoring the usage of tissue papers. While yes, there are places where we definitely need to place tissue papers for hygiene factors, but at the same time, we try to, and the way we did it for dustbins, we have tried to place common tissue boxes instead of individual tissue boxes, so that there is restricted usage. We have sent across that messaging to our employees as well, not to use plastic boxes, lunch boxes, or plastic bottles which they carry for themselves. So that is another messaging that we try to create. So that is from a paper consumption and plastic usage perspective. On energy consumption, what we have done is in our offices, we have switched the lighting system to all the lights are LED lights now, at least for the new offices that are coming up. or the replacements that we are making. We are ensuring that these are LED lights and the ACs, air conditioners are only 5-star air conditioners. It costs us relatively higher at the first stage, but then if you observe the consumption, the power consumption reduces by 50%, almost by 50%. So that is another area. So these are top 3 initiatives that come to my mind right away for at least in environment space. And happy to connect with you, Dr. Aparna, if you wish to discuss this any further.
So, because we would definitely like to implement in our institute and our trust society, few of the initiatives are possible. We are already taking, of course, like you said, the hygiene part. We have just recently placed a a water cooler, and we replenish it with the plastic cups. I don't know how to get over with that. Of course, that's yet another. Like when you talk about this, you're talking about when you wash all these glasses. The glass tumblers. Again, you are using the detergents. You're polluting water there. That's yet another. This is something which is correlated. Everything is correlated, kind of a thing. One thing leads to the another. So if you save on one side, you're adding to that other. That's the problem. These are the challenges, of course, but the usage of paper, like you've said, is definitely very much possible and doable. And of course, we can consider, like we don't have many visitors coming over. We can consider this aspect as well, the tumbler part. We use reusable tumblers there, right? And of course, those bins again, hygiene part, we have to have it. But what we can do is we can replace it with the green bins and the dry part. Dry and the wet wastage. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure being here. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, ma'am. And of course, we'll be in touch and we can take it further for this college also. As sir suggested, and sir was seeking your help, and I'll be in touch with you. And of course, we'll make this earth a better place to live. So thank you so very much, ma'am, for coming here and sharing your wisdom with all of us. Thank you.
Ishita, there are some questions to the ma'am. Can you ask the students to take up those questions?
Yes. Good morning, ma'am. Am I audible? Yeah. So, ma'am, I have a question that whilst implementation of ESG framework and standard, it means a big change for the world. So, according to you, what are the challenges that a company faces in this journey?
So, see, well, this is a step-by-step journey, and hence we also have challenges at each step. So what we have been facing, while we are still at a very nascent stage, but what we have been facing as an organization is tracking of these initiatives, collating the data and the evidences, because all of this is required for the reporting purposes. Hence, these little steps also help us learn, but at the same time, these challenges take a little time to overcome and contribute and achieve that level. So I would say if we talk about the challenges, definitely tracking of the initiatives, collection of the evidences, selecting the appropriate frameworks, because there are a lot of frameworks, ESG frameworks, which we need to evaluate and adopt accordingly. That is there. And consolidating all these data and the inputs from various functions. As Gokul was mentioning, it is not only one team that works towards ESG initiatives. It is the whole organization. All the functions come together. So that is again a challenge that we see. And we also have to see how do we report it, whether it is to be reported as a separate ESG report, or do we want to do it as part of our annual report? So these are a few challenges that a company faces while implementation. I hope that addresses your question.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Ma'am, I have one
question for Shilpa, ma'am. Yeah. I have one question for Shilpa, ma'am. How can an employee contribute toward ESG in an individual capacity?
Sure. So as an employee, as a customer, we look forward that yes, organization needs to do something. Is the organization doing something towards ESG? In the same way, we also need to understand that how are we in our individual capacity contributing towards those ESG initiatives. These are like small baby steps that we can take. Lesser paper consumption, we talked about. Say no to single-use plastic at home as well, and start carpooling. And if you're planning to buy a vehicle, go for electric cars, electric vehicles. Plant more and prefer a vegetarian diet. I guess that's one of the smaller things that we can consider. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, Dr. Devendra Sharma, you can
Yes,
go
ma'am.
ahead with
Thank
your
you, ma'am.
question.
Yeah, ma'am. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
But my question is that how companies navigating ESG trade-offs?
Could you please elaborate this question a little?
I mean, basically, how the companies roll with that, because we're navigating ESG trade-offs. We see the changing scenario, changing global change, and company have different, you can say, thought about all these ESG concepts. Regarding the trades, how the beneficiary, the companies with respect to the ESG, with their financial stability and financial their stakeholders, what their you can say contribution in that, and how the company can move with that.
See, because we are at a very nascent stage, and as like I would suggest, or maybe I would request Gokul, who is an expert from a consulting firm, would definitely have experience across, would be able to address this question of yours.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, I'm still not clear of your question. So could you repeat, please?
So how companies navigating ESG trade-offs?
I mean, trade-off in the sense, like, can you be a little specific?
I mean, trade-off with respect to in all the areas with business leaders and people are come and correlate, and they can see their costing, the other things which can.
Okay, got it.
In this line, yeah.
Okay. So, what you're trying to say is that now, so far we have been following certain journey, and suddenly the ESG came in, then how the journey is going to change. That's what I understand your question is all about. So, like, as we have been discussing, ESG is actually a kind of, it's suddenly gained in importance, and every company is actually looking at that how we need to embed ESG into the frameworks, because it's actually not easy. It's actually challenging, and some challenges even Shilpa Mama also spoke about it. So now what's happening is that every company as a corporate, what they're trying to look at is that even if they want to buy a product, they would like to understand what is the ESG impact of that product. Say, for example, if a company is ready to buy a steel, they would like to look at what is the carbon footprint of that steel before buying. And then there will be some 3-4 buyers who will be there, and then they will assess the carbon footprint of each of the product and then associated cost. So then what happens is that, you will come to know there is a framework which you will develop. That framework will not only evaluate the cost of the product, it will also evaluate the ESG impact of that particular product. So now equal weightage has been given. That's how the trade-offs actually been determined. So if this started happening across your value chain, for example, today if I do, my customers are also going to do, my suppliers are also going to do, then what happens across the value chain, the ESG will start getting embedded. If I ensure that I only procure the product which has lesser carbon footprint, even my customer also is going to procure only the product which has lesser carbon footprint. So somewhere or other, the trade-off that you speak about, it will be there today, but over a period of time, this trade-off will get automatically extinguished. So that's how the entire spectrum of value chain is getting, benefited.
All right. Thank you very much.
I think hope answer.
Sir, I have a question.
Please, sir.
See, the first question is how the CSR and ESG are related. That is first part. And second part, since we had an amendment in Company Act in 2013 about CSR, is there any such legal provisions regarding the ESG?
Yeah. So the first point is that the CSR is getting covered under social as a community-related initiatives, which Shilpa ma'am also spoke about it. So it's one component where it primarily talks about all the CSR initiatives over and above what you do for a company, CSR Act, mandated as per the CSR Act. So that's answered your first question. The second question, the mandatory part, again, it was also spoke about, Shilpa ma'am, is that, now the BRSR is the new requirement, which is called Business Responsibility and Sustainability Report. This is mandated for the top 1,000 companies in terms of top 1,000 listed companies in terms of market cap, where you would be highlighting about all the ESG aspects in a form of a publication, in form of a report, as well as a standard XBRL format that you need to report to SEBI. Hope I answered your question.
Yes, sir.
Sir, I have a question, if you allow. Yeah. This is regarding, like we always talk about, and in today's news also, there was a news regarding Chinese products. So it is normally been perceived as not that climate friendly. Taking to the same, like I would like to extend the same question as of asked by Dr. Shamshed. We are talking about regulatory frameworks, we are talking about governance, we are talking about all the bigger boundaries and setup which can be created by government for bigger companies, bigger setup which is identifiable in terms of stakeholders. But what will happen to the ground reality, the smaller setups, the indigenous entities? Like, is there any plan that the government is having wherein we can make them inclusive in this whole execution part, sir?
Yeah, I know it's a very large question, ma'am, but still, what I understand is that you would like to look at, how the international trade is going to have an impact on the smaller beneficiaries and smaller medium scale enterprises, right? So if that's the question, so I spoke about one point which is called carbon border adjustment mechanism. Right?
Yes.
How the things are going to evolve in US and UK is something which is going to get evolved even in India too. This is on under evaluation. So evolution, I would say. The carbon border adjustment mechanism is basically a mechanism which try to understand what is the carbon footprint of the product before it's going to hit my country. For example, as an EU importer, suppose if I'm buying this, say this mouse, I need to understand what is the product carbon footprint of this mouse before it hits my boundary, right? So then I have a choice to choose from a country or from the exporter who's going to import me. I can choose wherever the product carbon footprint is less, more than the, I would say, the cost, right? And I also spoke about one more thing. India has a voluntary carbon market where India's market is going to get established. And there is one more thing which India has signed upon, which is called Article 6.2 of the Paris Agreement, where India has identified 13 technologies, and those 30 technologies where you can have a bilateral trade with other countries. So in that way, what happens, whatever the technology is going to come, that I'm talking about large technologies for that matter. So obviously, it's going to come within this bilateral trade. If in China wants to work with India, again, they need to follow the similar bilateral trade. Coming to the second point of your question, where you spoke about the MSMEs, of course, like, MSMEs are the one definitely might get impacted because of all these export terms. Because the one of question that people have asked about what are the challenges, the typical challenge that I've seen in ESG is the data management. And data management with the validated invoice, etc., where you can really prove that yes, I have done something. So that's actually a challenge that we have seen even in the MSME segment. I know currently there are certain restrictions, and for them to export, because if CBAM is the carbon border mechanism is getting started, which is from October 2023, certainly there's going to be some impact for sure. And that's where government is also coming up with the equal voluntary market, so that in way that we also have voluntary market, whatever the requirements is there from the global standards, more or less it's met. The MSMEs who are there are kind of getting protected, whereas the large companies obviously needs to take a hit on it, right? So this is how the global valuation, or maybe I would say the evolution on ESG and the impact is going to get monitored and measured.
Thank you so very much, sir. It answered my question.
Thanks, ma'am.
Thank you so very much, sir.
I can see there are other
I have
hand
one
raised,
question
so
for
they can ask their questions.
I have one question for Gokul sir. Can ESG help in India achieving the SDG goals?
Yeah, indeed. That's the objective, right? So I mean, you need to understand ESG is not, I would say, it's not just a component, or it's not just a scale or a framework or whatever. It's actually, I would say, the practices which Shilpa ma'am spoke about. Okay, so I don't want to consume plastics. so we're contributing to ESG. And then whatever the energy consumption that we are having in the organization that we did to reduce, again, it's a component of ESG, right? So similarly, even we also as EY, we would like to go carbon, net zero by 2025, right? So we would like to completely remove the emissions from our system. The offices which are there is all completely green. So, 100% that we would like to go for green energy. So what happens if the entire organization started focusing on the, or the entire corporate segment focusing on it? And of course, then, all the SDG goals are actually intertwined with the ESG requirements. All the 17 ESG goals. For example, I spoke about climate action failure. It's actually the seventh ESG goal. If you look at the ESDG goal, I would say, right? So it's all intertwined, one across the other. So obviously, the moment adopt ESG will certainly help you in achieving these UN SDG goals.
So I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So what are the factors that can be taken, or maybe what are the factors that we can consider while setting up ESG policy in any industry?
So we need to figure out the policy. For that, we need to first understand where exactly in terms of ESG maturity, right? You cannot have a strict policy, but you are not able to follow it. So the first and foremost a corporate needs to do is to understand where exactly on the ESG framework, I would say from the 0 to 5, where are we first, right? So since ESG it's going to be a long journey, and I would be a continuous journey for that matter. So if you're looking at 2030, 2050, 2070, so it's actually going to be a journey for that, right? So first we need to assess the ESG maturity. Then this is the maturity. Suppose if you are on the leading side of the maturity, then you can have define the policies, and you can also look at the adequacy of the policy. Then you move forward. But if you are in the beginning stage of the ESG maturity, then you need to define a policy where you can actually create your own management function to enable the policy, and then how you will get the data management, etc. So that defines like where exactly you're going to be on the ESG maturity. That defines your policies and functions and management systems.
My question is that being a fresher and a student of management, how this ESG and awareness regarding ESG important for us, and how does it help us in future?
Of course, you'll get an opportunity to join us.
So my question related
to
Yes, sir. My question related to Varsha question is, what are the types of short-term courses or related courses which help the students go into the field of ESG?
Okay, so there are many courses, sir, to answer your question. So, there are courses around climate finance. There are courses around even in ESG for that matter. I think there are some courses. There are some policy related courses which are there. So as I mentioned, that it's not that one specific framework or a course which will help you to address all of that. And I'm not sure. Sorry, I don't know your curriculum, to be honest with you. But there are certain colleges as well. They are giving some curriculum towards sustainability. So that is also another one course which probably I would say broadly covers the ambit of ESG. So I wouldn't say it's like one-stop shop that you have, but yeah, it's going to be a mix of area, and people have to find out their interest, I would say, because the someone who is actually more aligned towards the social responsibility side, and if they want to go to hardcore decarbonization, it's going to be really difficult for them to understand. Similarly, vice versa also, like someone who is hardcore in decarbonization would like to look at social aspect, it's going to take some time. So they need to first pick up one and then start learning others. Then over a period of time, of course, they will be able to get the overview of all the aspects of ESG.
I think Ms. Pranati Pahli has a question.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Yeah. I wanted to ask a question any of the panelists can answer that for an educational institution, how do you think that this framework can be implemented? Anything in specific that we can do to lower the carbon footprints, or what can specifically be done?
Yeah, I think probably I will also ask Shilpa ma'am to answer after my response. Is that whatever the ma'am spoke about, it's all can be implemented across any institution. Whatever even I spoke about, it's all can be implemented. The moment you want to go for an ESG compliant, right from your institution, your buildings, how do you want to keep the buildings? Whether you want to keep an environment compliant building, right? Because even you want to take any LEED certification, that's an opportunity for you. Or you want to take up a net zero, which is going to be even tougher goal. That's an opportunity, like we can implement it. And of course, from the human capital development, you can also think about how can we enable the staffs to have more knowledge around the subject which is happening. So that's again so from the social side. And corporate governance, obviously, every organization is following. In India, I would say corporate governance is one of the aspect which I have seen everywhere. It's been implemented, right? So I mean, there are multitude of tasks can be conducted across, and I would take views from even Shilpa ma'am as well.
So just to add to what Gokul sir mentioned, so the initiatives that we just talked about, be it the effective resource management, we talked about how can we have an effective utilization around papers and energy and water. So by using maybe censored tabs and other technology that is coming up. So those are a few things, but in addition to that, as an institute, you can also maybe contribute towards there are initiatives where maybe small initiatives where you can consider these scrap vendors who know how to dispose of, where to dispose of these scrap. So you should have visibility. So there are these small little things. Maybe Gokul would have more clarity around what are the options that these scrap vendors have than the various scrap vendors in the market now. And organizations are evaluating before they give away the scrap. So these are small little common initiatives which can be implemented across. Those are there. Plantation, creating awareness. You would also have your own service providers. So creating awareness around these initiatives, urging them to participate in these initiatives. So these are, like, I would say, common initiatives that like any institute and organization can work towards. Hope that answers your question.
I have a question. Yeah. May I? Okay.
Yeah,
Yes,
please.
Sir, the question is related with the plastic ban. What do you think? What is your opinion? How successful it will be? Right now, it's single-use plastic ban, but we still find number of single-use plastic are available across the various vendors and other things, especially the plastic bags, which are with the vegetable vendors and others. So what needs to be done from the government side or the society side to ensure that these plastics are removed from the society?
It's it's a very tricky question to answer. So, but still, always whenever you look at any management function, so there is something called push factor and pull factor. So that's a simple strategy. So the push factor, of course, the government is, kind of putting up a punitive measures if someone is actually coming out with the or using the plastics for that matter. You have to take some action around that. That's number one. There is also a pull factor towards it now. I'm not sure, like we must have heard of carbon credits. Now there are plastic credits which are available, right? There are many organizations which are actually looking at collection and the recycling of plastics. There is something called plastic credit exchange. For the benefit of each of you, can go through their website. For each and every project, or maybe suppose if you would like to have a plastic collection as one of the project that you would like to pick it up in your in your institution, and if you're able to collect certain plastics, and then if it is being given for a recycling or even to any collection agent, and then you can say, okay, this is an activity that we are trying to look at, and then we spent a lot of time and resources to collect the plastics, and if you can actually publish it as a project to plastic credit exchange, and there is an opportunity for you to get revenue also for that matter. So that I would say is a pull factor. In India, we do have this EcoX. There's another one, that you have, and then EPR also has a marketplace where you can actually trade plastics. Not a hardcore plastics, not a plastics. It's not a paper credits. It's actual plastics trade off, I'm saying. So I would look at both this strategy, push and pull. That's how government will follow, because 100% push also will not get implemented. We all know what is the scenario of MSW in our country. Like the MSW is being there. I mean, MSW Act is being there since 2003, but still, we are yet to see a scientific landfill. So that's the overall. Now I would put it analogy and then answer your question.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? Okay, it seems like we are done with the question and answer session. With the end of question and answer session, finally to express our gratitude to all the esteemed speakers and participants. And Mr. Sandeep Srivastava is not able to join us due to some technical issues. We regret that he could be here with us. Okay, we would like to invite Dr. Shamsher Singh, the event convener, to deliver the vote of thanks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Smriti, to giving me this opportunity. It's my gratitude, and I express my sincere thanks to all those who have contributed today to make this event a successful one. I'll start with the Gopal Pandian sir. I had been interacting with him over a lot of issues, and finally we could come to a conclusion that yes, we can do it. And when I talk about Gopal sir, he's very humble, and he accepted our invites without any hitch and this thing. And I'm sure the audience has immensely benefited with his voice and the wisdom and the information, knowledge he has shared today. If I specially mention a few points, like he said about the investors. Now the investors are also looking at the ESG. What are the rule and what are the benefits the investors are looking if a company is following ESG? And if I add something more to this, perhaps why the banks have failed in America. One of the reason may be this. This may be one of the reason. And there are different rating agencies, as mentioned by sir, which are rating the companies according to their framework. And those who are getting higher ratings, they are able to have the more investment coming and flowing through them. And not only the investment, it's also the prestige which associated with a particular organization if they have a high ratings. Now coming to Shilpa ma'am, marvelous ma'am. You have done wonderful job to the this particular discussion by bringing a number of new things which were I think unknown to most of us. Like you said that there will be a time when the 2/3 asset will be owned by only 1% of the population across the world. That's really, I must say that it's a alarming situation. Alarming situation for the whole world. And the second point which you talk about, what are the measures the companies are taking, especially you give the example of your own company. And most of these examples can be emulated by the companies or the organization across. I sincerely thank you for giving this insight. And one I would like to highlight the consumption pattern, what you spoke about. How do we reduce the consumptions? That's another interesting issue. In fact, if we take a small measures, as you said, the having LED lights, even if we start the same thing at our home and in our institutions. And the second, which I would like to add in, switch off, which we had put in our college also. Anything which is not in use, please switch it off. For example, fans, air conditioners, lights, and so on. So it's a complete alignment with what you said and what we are following here. And if the same step is taken by every individual, be it at home, be it at office, be it at any other place, definitely this is going to reduce the carbon footprint. And another interesting thing which I heard from Gokul sir, plastic credits. We were having the knowledge about the carbon credits and how this can be traded with the other organizations, but now we have to seriously look at this plastic credit also. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, ma'am. It was very enlightening session. I would like to also thank the panelists which are going to do the panel discussion of this. Our moderator is Dr. Rajeshwari Daya. She had a wide experience on the subjects as well as in the academics. I'm sure she will bring lot many other aspects of the issue. Then we have Dr. Aman Gupta. He will also be talking about a number of issues. I'm sure we all will be immensely benefited with their wisdom. And then also Miss Aruna Pandey. Miss Aruna Pandey earlier was associated with the United Nations, but now she is independent consultant. I'm sure with the rich experience, all the panelists will be delivering the right kind of information, which is requirement of the time. I will be failing in my appreciation if I do not name someone, especially our Vice Chairman, Sri Vipul Gupta ji, who had been behind a number of new initiatives which we have been taking in our colleges. And all these initiatives are supported by our director, and the faculty does contribute a lot of things in this. My fellow panel convener, Mr. Jain Sanyal, and also we had Ms. Parkhi, who had done a wonderful job in ensuring that our both the anchors are through the whole session and they are able to control the session. I must appreciate their efforts, and there are a technical team behind this. My volunteer students who are responsible for the technical things and also a number of other issues, I must thank all of them. So my sincere thank to all the panelists, VC sir, director ma'am, the anchors, my co-panelists, and my whole volunteer team. Thank you very much. Without your support, this conclave would not have been what it is today. And I'm sure the panel discussion will be further enlightening all of us. Thank you so much. Over to Ishita or Smriti. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, Pandyan sir, and Shilpa ma'am. So with your blessings, now we'd like to proceed with the panel discussion.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so very much, sir.
Thank you, sir, for the vote of thanks, and ma'am. With that, we conclude the inaugural session of this management conclave. Thank you to all the speakers for providing us with such an insightful session and enlightening us to analyze the emergence of environmental social governance as a value creator for Indian ecosystem. We hope you all found it inspiring and informative session. Now, we will move forward for the panel discussion in which we have Dr. Rajeshwari Dhaya Malik as the moderator. She is a transformation educationist, strategist, and advisor driven by SDGs at Convergence of Genders. She worked as head of department and professor at Maharaja Surajmal Institute, GGSIT University, for New Delhi for 20 years and had been a prolific author of 8 books and researcher with 100 plus research papers.
Our esteemed speakers for the discussion are Manoj Kumar Shah, Head ESG and Sustainability, Azure Power Delhi, having almost 10 years experience in the field of ESG. Next, Dr. Aman Gupta, National Head Corporate Regulatory and Scientific Affairs, Yum Brands India, Diplomat University of Oxford, UK, visiting fellowship Harvard Medical School, USA, experience of almost 10 years ESG, Ms. Aruna Pandey, independent consultant, sustainability and regeneration, having almost experience of 3 years. Now, I would like to hand over this session to Dr. Rajeshwari Dahiya to continue further. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Samriddhi. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Thank you. Thank you so much. A very warm good morning, almost good afternoon to all of you. And thank you so much, Banarsi Das Chandiwala Institute team for inviting me. Thank you, Dr. Aparna Mishra, ma'am. Thank you, Samsher Singh, sir. And a warm welcome to my fellow panelists. The very important topic that we are discussing today is ESG, and ESG, I would be moderating the panel discussion, but at the same time, I would also like to throw some light on how ESG is directly related to SDGs. Because SDGs is something that is a very universal concept, which is applicable to anybody and everybody, and ESG is, as we know, it's primarily the SDG part of ESG, corporate part of SDG, which has been assigned to the corporate houses. So it would be some other day. I would love to interact with the students of management and have a session on SDGs with them so that they understand what role they can play, not just in attainment of SDGs, but also contribute towards reducing the number of SDGs. The topic that we have today is ESGs and how ESGs is going to act as a catalyst for value creation in the Indian ecosystem. As mentioned earlier, anything that is imposed on us, whether it was CSR, whether it was green marketing, whether it was the labeling or other management developments that took place in 1970s and 80s, anything related to environment, society, or goodwill is not going to be effective unless and until it comes from within. Now, as ESG is something that has been not made mandatory for it's just mandatory for 1,000 listed companies that they have to give the ESG report. For rest of the organization, for rest of the people, it is not even mandatory. So anything that is not so well defined, not so legally imposed, how are we going to get benefits out of it, or how is it going to act as a catalyst for value creation? That is what we would be discussing. And I'm more than happy to share this platform with two very important people, Aruna and Dr. Aman. Let's start the discussion with the very basic. Let's start with the basic definition of ESG. I would like to invite Dr. Aman Gupta to just help us in understanding the concept of ESG better. What do you think ESG is all about?
Thank you, Dr. Malik, and good afternoon, everyone. I think it's a pleasure to be here, attend this conclave, right? And I'm really excited, and I always get excited when I get an opportunity to talk to students, be it students of a MBA school or a medical school or a research school, because this keeps me motivating to keep learning, right? So I have made a small presentation for the sake of, it is always good for students to get indulged, right, and get some more insight. And because visual spatial, memory is, probably one of the best recalled memories. So those are the points basis which I thought it would be good to have a small presentation. My apologies if some part is a repetition, because I understand since morning there have been certain discussion on ESG, and please bear with me if there is any representation, and if you wish to fast track on certain slides, just let me know. So I am just give me a second. I'll just project my slides. So Dr. Malik, can you just confirm if you are able to see the deck? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Yes.
So I am audible as well to all the students, right? Okay. So, dear students and esteemed members and all the faculty members as well who are present currently on the call, I have tried to keep it very simple. We most of us as a faculty members or industry members, we know the concept. I think the idea is to how we can enlighten the students over here. So that was my whole thought process. I'll touch some part of regulatory aspects as well. And I will also, in the end, talk about, why there will, in coming future, there would be a need of professionals in this domain, right? So to start with, I again reiterating what is ESG. We all know, again reiterating, E stands for environment, S for social and governance. And I'm very sure all of us have been working on this. Social, we have been working on the CSR part before this ESG framework came. Now CSR is the part of social or the ESG again. The governance, the regulatory part, we have already been taking care of with all the current regulatory policies in various industry and academic portfolios, right? And the environment, we all are, I think all of us want to work for the environment. So I would say this is something which we have been doing, but in a new set of framework, right? So this is important, right, to understand. So this is a broad agenda. I'll cover the definition of ESG, what is the regulatory scenario requirement around this, what are the categories of categories and scopes of carbon footprint, or if we specifically talk about the environment part within the ESG, and I will also try to define the carbon footprint and what is the UN background. I know we have experts here from UN, but I just try to cover one simple slide on that, and what is India commitment and what should be the SOP for the execution for the ESG portfolio in any of our organizations. And we see ESG. So why ESG? I think Dr. Malik has already indicated on the regulatory requirement. I will get a bit deeper dive into this. So we have multiple regulatory agencies in India. For food, we have FSSAI. For drugs, we have Drug Controller General or CDSCO. For for telecommunications, yeah, different regulatory. So similarly, there is SEBI, Security Exchange Board of India, right? SEBI is basically is a regulatory agency which takes care of multiple aspects of companies, be it regulating the inside trading or multiple aspects. So that part of the ESG now from next year onwards, for the top 1,000 listed company, there is a mandatory reporting requirement with respect to the ESG. So that's where the point has come up why we are hearing more about ESG now, because there is upcoming regulatory requirement, right? It is as of now so only for the first 1,000 companies, listed companies, but I think going forward, there would be more, private limited companies may also be part of this particular activity. And I have been in constant touch with SEBI and the regulators. I know what is the expectation of the government, right? Second very important part of the ESG requirement is the investors demand. Now see, as we talk about 1,000 listed companies, many of these companies have external, which means global investors. Listed companies, they have global investors, and I tell you very honestly, the global investors, they only invest in the Indian companies when you have a very strong background on ESG, right? ESG is one of the prime indicators for the global investors to invest in your organization. So again, for BBA and MBA students, this is very important to understand. So, BBA, MBA students may not be that keen or that, to understand or know how, build a know-how on regulatory, but then one point is very clear, all the investments which are global in nature, they are going to be based on the ESG ranking, right? So this is how, and then we speak about principles. There are essential principles which are mandatory as of now, and there are leadership principles which are voluntary. But as I discussed with SEBI and other government organizations, right? I think going forward, leadership, indicators would also be a bit part of that would be mandatory as well. So let us go through quickly what are these essential principles. I won't spend much time, but I definitely want to get into the individual points. And let us talk about the point number one. It pertains to the training, right? And the training, if you talk, it is part of the HR only. It becomes part of the social as well. It becomes a part of the governance as well. And within this training, all the organizations, right, they need to train their employees about the anti-corruption and any other policies related to that, right? Then capex, I think all my fellow MBA students and BBA students must be aware of the capex term, right? Capex is basically investment, right? But you permanent invest in the permanent kind of infrastructure, right? And then environment ESG related, ESG related capex investment is again one of the key indicators or the potential or the mandatory indicators to support you, where government can have in future certain plans to support these kind of organizations, right? Then employee well-being, we all know, retirement benefits, health and safety. Then a very important complaint redressal, right? And we know the POSCO, we know the sexual harassment and other things, right? Right. And when I say POSCO, right, I say that, there are various organizations which are like factory, and they have certain times part-time they recruit, below 18 years as well, above 16 and below 18, right? So this is a debatable issue, but I wanted to just highlight this as well. Then we come to the human rights. We all are aware of human rights, right? Grievance redressal for the employees, like this. This was very important aspect, which is sexual harassment, right? And there has to be a redressal system, right? There are redressal system, but this is very, very important as far as the governance and the social aspects of the ESGs are concerned. And that is the carbon footprint. And we all know the carbon footprint, energy consumption, greenhouse gases, and then EPR may also come into this, which is the plastic management, plastic waste management, and of course, measurement of the CFP. As of now, the government is only asking for declarations. There are no remedial actions required. But so our target is to get some remedial action as well. So then there are certain CSR activities. Then there are grievance readers at the community level, what you are doing at the community level, and then what are the grievance reduction at the customer level, like the complaint, feedback, and cybersecurity. Again, putting up all these, these parameters, all these 9 principles into the bucket of environment, social, and governance. This is just a repetition. I'll just pause here. Any of the students, when any have any question, just let me know, or we can take up questions in the later stage as well. Now, coming to a very important definition, carbon footprint. I know, this is a bit scientific, but then I think we all are very well aware of the carbon footprint. But then very broadly, it's a footprint. We know what is the meaning of footprint. And the carbon here talks about the carbon dioxide broadly. The greenhouse gases majorly comprise of carbon dioxide, methane and other gases as well. But overall, when we collect equivalents, when we count equivalents on the basis of carbon dioxide only, right? So this is the definition. I'm not going to read it out, but the bottom line point is, how much carbon dioxide equivalents are being generated at a particular entity level. So this is, if you see, this is basically the position of the United Nations, right? And if you see in India also is in the, red zone, right? And, so we can have discussion on this if somebody is interested, but then the paucity of time, I'm just, moving ahead. Now, this is important slide to understand, now, so there are emissions, there are emissions which are adding to the carbon footprint. And then we have a decarbonization strategy, right? Now, increase in global greenhouse gases emission projected by 2020, by 2030 is plus 14%, right? And if we wish to keep the warming to no more than 1.5 degrees Celsius, we have to do 45% of the decarbonization activity. Then it only we would be in a position to achieve that no more than 1.5 degrees Celsius target. Now, this is very important to understand. See, if you see the emissions, even with plus 14% emission, the kind of decarbonization efforts we need to put is more than twice, right? It is 45%, right? This is very important, where again all the United Nations and even our country under the leadership of Shri PM Shri Narendra Modi ji. So we have also as an organization made certain commitments, which I'll cover in the next slide. Broadly, if I say by 2030, we target to achieve at least 40% of electric power, right? The bottom line is, right, your bottom line is to get onto more of the renewable sources of energy and reduce the usage of fossil fuels, right? Now, in one of the conferences, one of the students, it was a conference for the scientific fraternity. One of the students asked me, please tell me, even if we are using the electricity, right, the source of electricity majorly in India is, thermal, right? It's a thermal origin electricity. The coal is burning. How it is going to impact it's a very good question, right? You please, but I would like to highlight here, when we have a thermal unit which is away from the, city population, right? There are, there is greenery, and the consumption of whatever carbon dioxide or the other gases are produced, they are neutralized to a much greater extent in that kind of area, right? However, when we burn the fossil fuels in our vehicles, right? So those kind of emissions in cities like Delhi, in cities, major cities like Delhi, and even metros, and even in the smaller cities. So it is very difficult to neutralize those emissions. So this is important to understand why the government is pushing hard for the electric vehicles now, because there is science behind that, right? And technically speaking, I think as far as the net zero is concerned, I think there is a concept of net zero by virtue of which, the neutrality of the carbon footprint is, the greenhouse gases is obtained, right? So I think UN has a target of 2050, but India has a target of 2070. Dr. Malik, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we have a softer target. But I tell you, the other targets which are related to renewable energy, which are related to reduction in carbon emissions, they are much, much, much stronger and taller as compared to global developed countries. Similarly, we did a single-use plastic eradication. I think we were probably the first country to do that. I'm proud to be an Indian, and I'm very happy that those steps were taken by the government. Very, very shortly, I would also cover, what are the different scopes of decarbonization, right? Why these are important to understand. See, when we talk about any kind of regulatory requirement, right? A regulatory requirement by any country comes within phases, right? They come with phases. Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Now, scope 1, 2, and 3, they are basically scopes of the decarbonization techniques where you tend to decrease the carbon footprint, number one, at our on entity level, which primarily is covered within the scope 1 and 2, which means, say for example, the current university or current institute you are working in, Chandiwala Institute, right? So if as an organization, the chairperson wishes to take a step towards decarbonization, right? So to reduce the decarbonization within your organization will fall under the category of scope 1 and 2, right? The stuff which I am supposed to do for my organization, that is typically scope 1 and 2, right? Scope 3 basically comprise of those things which for which I am dependent upon others, right? Right. Like for example, if I am a manufacturing unit who manufactures a cheese factory, or for example, something, a bread or anything, right? If I want to get those, intermediates which are part of that cheese, all those things purchase from a other factory, right? So though if something is required from other factory, right? So that that reduction in those aspects of carbon footprint, you have to go to that XYZ factory which is third party and get reduction at their level. So that which is not a part of your organization, so that basically is covered under scope 3. So broadly, we say scope 1 comprises of fuel emissions, company vehicles, process emissions, like process emission, but you can have fuel emissions, we are clear. Company vehicles, we are clear. Process emissions, like a factory will have lot of wastewater, electricity, heat, thermal energy, etc., etc. Like scope 2 will be purchased electricity, heat and steam, right? But somehow I feel process emission, in scope 1 and 2 they have some overlapping as well. And the scope 3, I already emphasized upon purchase goods and the business travel which you do, because you are using a third party system to travel, which is maybe aeroplane, which may be a train, right? And the scope 3 comprise of 15 categories. Now, Dr. Malik can just help me understand. If we have time, I can go through this, or if we see that we don't have time, I can skip this slide.
I think it will be important that we take this during the question answer session, because I think the students would have a lot of questions related to the categories. So okay, if we can like expedite a bit, we'll have more time for interaction.
Sure. So what should be the standard operating protocol, right? I think very important aspect, first of all, we need to select the standard or the reference year. Now, I tell you why I'm saying this is, for example, regulatory requirement for mandating me for the next year of declaration. So, but I need to have a baseline year. Say, for example, for next year, I will have a current year as a baseline. I'll calculate the carbon footprint, right, for current year, right, and then keep it as a baseline. Because see, you will have to make commitments which will be which will be compared with some baselines, right? The second part is the GHG accounting at the corporate level, right? You have to have a baseline, you have to that account. And then third very important point is verification from third party, right? This is one of the key important points. Why this is important? We may not be regulatory point of view. There may not be a requirement of keeping this particular verification handy right now. However, right, going forward, this is going to be one of the key aspects to be taken care of. So strongly recommend whosoever wishes to do this kind of, he or she should be very. So next part is the decarbonization strategy. We based on the verification of third party verification, we can optimize on the reduction strategies as well and the net zero pathway, right? So this is a similar kind of framework, right? I'm not going to details of it. We may take this in the form of questions. So this is just an example, right? And I tell you, I have personally calculated the carbon footprint for my home, right? If you compare the carbon footprint which we are creating as compared to the the developed country is very, very high, right? And strongly say there is a need to intervene on urgent basis, right? So again, this is something I just want to skip, and that's all from my side, right? And in case there are questions which we want to take up right away or later on, I think most welcome for those questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Aman Gupta, for this insightful presentation. And I hope the students of management would be highly benefited by this. I think we'll take up questions at the end of the panel discussion so that all of us can attend to the questions on attentive basis. Yeah. So as you mentioned, this ESG is not just a good intention. ESG is some kind of a behavioral change which is required from inside out to actually transform the world. Now, when we look at organizations, when we look at corporate, from 1970s, when we started talking about social responsibility, from there we move on to compulsory CSR and then rules and regulations guiding CSR. We have understood what corporate citizenship is all about. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Aruna Pandey to throw some light on what is the role of corporate citizenship in ESG and how you think the organizations can add value to their overall business through ESG. Over to you, Aruna.
Thank you, Dr. Malik, and thank you, Dr. Singh, for getting me to participate in the forum today. It has been, I've logged in since 10 o'clock, and it has been absolutely insightful just to listen to the previous speakers and now Dr. Gupta. So I'm very happy that something like this is happening, particularly for management school students. I feel particularly very, very young after my introduction today. Unfortunately, I'm not so young. So spent about 2 decades in the sector. Now I think one of the important things that all of us are today understanding is that there are certain crises that's facing the world today. And we've tried our best through the Millennium Development Goals, through the work of the government. And part of it, we saw glimpses of it, of the breakage of the social fabric during COVID-19. There are numerous instances where things are staring into our face as to what is not working. And more recently, there has been increased impetus towards how do we actually stand by the Constitution of India. And that's what the government has also been facing and trying to push for. So if I speak of the Constitution of India, what are the core values that we stand for? Liberty, equity, fraternity, right? And if we go back to most of the regulations or the frameworks which have dominated the recent trends of practice and aspirations, either by the corporates or by the government or by civil society actors, they're coming from a space of building equity for all. And that's literally the tagline for SDGs today, right? Now, in this context, whether I see the CSR component when it was introduced in India, or now when we look at ESG, it's actually coming from a space of businesses taking responsibility with certain rights and duties to act in a certain way. And like Dr. Malik was saying, that we can't act in a certain way unless we become something else, right? So there's a purpose question, which is critical to today's discussion. The purpose of business has long been defined as one that makes profit, right? It's about accumulation, it's about profit making, it's about doing the best for your investors and stakeholders, right? Now, in case of today's purpose, we are saying that through these frameworks, we are introducing another purpose to that of what a business must become or must do. And that is coming from a space of taking responsibility for their own actions and taking a responsibility for the context in which they are thriving. The interest on the side of business, and you will see this in case of big giants, big companies. If you look at the corporate world, global corporate world, there are probably 10 giants that you can count on your fingers. And they're the ones who are determining everything that's happening in the business world, in the markets, how investments are structured, and how are we moving towards in terms of building an economy, right? And increasingly what they're realizing is that short-term goals will only get them so far because the businesses may be threatened by survival, right? So in order to survive, you need to reinvent yourself as a business as much as the government is pushing for you to take responsibility. And hence, uniquely, and that's a sweet spot that we have hit today in today's time, is that there is an increasing interest on the side of business to take responsibility and act. And there is a framework which is evolving in terms of citizenship, of institutions, which is telling us how do we do better than before? How do we listen better to what is happening in the world? Now, in that context is where corporate citizenship is located, right? And hence, I would like us to take a departure, right? And so far, we've talked a lot about the regulatory frameworks and the scrutiny and the reporting and all of that, right? The moment we talk about volition to act, a will to act because I feel the responsibility, it goes beyond scrutiny, right? And hence ESG is actually telling us that, okay, fine, CSR, there's a reporting structure and you have to declare what did you do. But now we are talking about how do you take responsibility for your core business actions. And that's what Dr. Aman Gupta beautifully detailed as to what are the certain kind of practices that we are questioning, whether it comes to our supply chain, whether it comes to our manufacturing processes, whether it comes to how do we interact with our key stakeholders not just being our customers or clients, but also people who work with us, people who are producing for us, our partners, and the communities that are directly impacted by our business. So it is a much wider canvas, is what I'm trying to say. And scrutiny is one small part of it, which is towards building accountability, which is very, very weak right now, right? Because we've just started on with it. And so, there is an increasing need for all of us who are management students to understand how do we inspire that responsibility in the corporate space? How do we nudge industries to do better, right? And that's where your strength comes in, right? That's where you as leaders and managers are going to determine how do we move forward towards building a different kind of a world. Another submission that I really have is that, there's a lot of talk around climate change and decarbonization. Fortunately, in the industry space now, it has taken them a long, long time even to admit that something like this is real, right? But the missing piece which still exists is the social unrest, is the inequities that we are talking about. And, as people who are, students of economics and management, we love numbers, isn't it? And so the reason why environment and climate change could actually make it into some of these frameworks very, very strongly is because we were able to design certain kinds of tangible ways of measuring, right? And carbon footprint is one of those examples. Right, so there are numerous scales and indices which have been introduced, which help us understand what does it mean to decarbonize, how do we achieve targets, and where do we stand vis-a-vis those targets. However, on the social unrest or the inequity side, a lot of it is very, very qualitative. Other than the inequity report, and some of you, if you're interested, you must look at the Oxfam inequity report, both for global trends and what's happening in the country today, right? And India is performing very, very badly on that front. We are doing great for certain sections of the society, and we are doing very, very badly for others. And so there is an increasing gap which needs to be dealt with. So, when we say corporate citizenship, when we say ESG, like it has been discussed by Gokul, Dr. Raman Gupta, and others, what is important is that we realize that it's not just the environment part of it. We are also talking about the clauses, the core values that ESG stands for: diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? And all this to enable well-being, right? So ESG is not just about how do I reduce my carbon footprint, but in the process of doing that, how am I enabling equity for all? In the process of doing that, how am I enhancing the well-being of key people that I am responsible for? And that's how they go hand in hand, and hence contribute to the SDGs, right? Which includes all kinds of social, environmental, and economic goals. To give you a broader scape of, why is it important to do this? And for the government and the businesses, one of the core mandates, that businesses have always kept forward is building trust, right? You have a good client base, if you have a good consumer base, you have good citizens who are compliant and help you govern the country better if there is trust placed in you, right? So trust is a very important factor. And when we talk about regulation and reporting, essentially we are talking about how do we enhance that accountability and trust. That's the space that we are coming from. So all this is largely, if you can summarize it in three big parts, right? One is taking responsibility. Two, talking about creating a thriving world for people that you are taking responsibility for. And three is building trust and assurance for a better world, right? And that's what all frameworks are talking about, including ESG. Now, in this, where do we stand? And I loved, thank you for that slide, Dr. Raman Gupta, that India is in the red zone. And there are reasons for it if we look at how are we doing on core indices, right? And some of those indices include what's happening to hunger, what's happening to nutrition, what's happening to education, what's happening to inequities, opportunities, women participation. In the last panel, we talked about labor force participation for women, which is a critical one. So, there are different kinds of factors which are really pushing us back into the red zone. But having said that, what are the three key goals of ESG, right? So if it is coming from all this space, if the perspective, the being is located in this space, where is the doing located, right? Through all those categories of changes that we would like businesses to introduce, we are saying that, we are actually talking about creating a credible, sustainable market, which is a priority for business, which is a priority for government, which is a priority for all of us, because all of us get employed in it, right? Education, everything is dictated by that. So a credible, sustainable market. What leads to a credible, sustainable market? And if you look at some of the regulations, if you look at the SRBR, it actually addresses 37 critical laws, the framework right now that Indian companies are supposed to report on. Right? So there is a legal regulatory background to the kind of reporting that SEBI has chosen for the top 1,000 companies. It's not very loosely structured, right? And so we are saying that there is going to be much greater scrutiny in terms of how are companies performing, like Gokul said, and how are they improving or changing their business processes. Right? And it's going to be much more detailed as the framework keeps evolving. To give you a sense of where we are when it comes to sustainable markets, now world over, it's a huge opportunity for sustainable investments. And if I just look at public equity, right, global capacity right now stands at, we are at 37% globally, and we are looking at volume of about $30.71 trillion, right? That's the kind of investment which is flowing globally into sustainable finance. But if you look at India, and what are we doing? Now, in 2020, there was this recent figure which was released. We barely stand at 2.65 billion, which means that only 240, and you can count them, 240 equity deals today have been made when it comes to sustainable financing based on public equity, right? So there is a huge potential for India. And there is a trend which is asking for such scrutiny, such investments, and creation of such markets, right? So everybody who's a student of finance, there you are, right? Sustainable finance is an amazing opportunity for you to explore and learn about, and then contribute to when it comes to creating better grounds for ESG. The second piece, which is absolutely critical, is, long tradition in the corporate world has been of divestment and externalization, right? To maximize our business potential, what do? We divest. So everything that's non-performing, you actually divest it, or you externalize costs. Now, ESG is talking about engagement, right? Which means that you own up your cost and you make them better. Right? And how do you do that? Unless you have credible disclosures for yourself and for others, you're not even going to recognize where you're failing. Right? So that is where the understanding of data science, understanding of business processes, understanding of creating better knowledge infrastructures for companies to be able to manage their investments better and to be able to create their engagement better when it comes to ESG. And hence it requires a lot of capacity building, a lot of training, use of technology to capture some of these, spillover cost or leakages, which are just running in businesses and we are not formally aware of. And hence we don't address them, right? The third thing, which is connected to this, is social issues in supply chain. Now, a lot of us talk about what happens to environmental issues in supply chain, right? But like we said, we are talking about how do we enhance decarbonization? How do we enhance our lower footprint, carbon footprint, while keeping equity in place? Right? So in offices, to give you a very small example at an institutional level, and thank you to Shilpa because she really nailed it down to very small practices, which gives you glimpses of what can happen at a large scale. Right? Now, in this, when we say that we should reduce plastics, right? We should move towards healthy, nutritional food. If I am an academic institution and I maintain a canteen, a mess, a lunch house for everybody, right? Or a corporate entity. Now, if we are talking about reducing plastic, having sustainable supply chains for certain kind of consumption that my office is doing, then I also have to look at where is this coming from? How is it impacting those who are involved in the trade? Right? So I don't just look at sourcing good, nutritious food. I look at, can I source them from local people? because that's where I'm building livelihoods, right? Enhancing equity. So it's actually a mishmash that we have to think about when we talk about environment and social issues. There is a high possibility that we all move towards the environment and leave out this, right? And what you will see in terms of global trends right now is that we are all talking about how do we include these inequities, social aspects, much, much strongly into looking at responsible business. Right? To give you another example, in the last session, a few of us asked about what about small enterprises? What about small businesses or medium-sized businesses who are right now not mandated by SEBI to follow ESG reporting? What about them? Now, to give you an example, if I look at the VC ecosystem, the venture capitalist ecosystem today in the country, there is an amazing PhD scholar called Sandeep Murtia who has been working in Rajasthan, and he reports that most of VCs. Remember, there was this boom of young people coming up with amazing enterprises, making a lot of money for the investors, and hence creating new businesses, right? Now, most of these VCs, and he quotes, and I quote from his report, almost 90% of VCs are no longer talking about growth at any cost, right? They're all talking about how do I look at responsibility, social responsibility, and sustainability in your business plans when you are seeking money from me. So entrepreneurship is already incorporating some of the targets, some of the guidelines of ESG. There is another, impetus which is coming from the UN. So UN has supported an investors network, and what we are trying to do is create responsible investment, principles of responsible investment, wherein we are trying to create a global network of VCs to follow certain standardized metrics when they are evaluating business proposals for funding. Right? And these will include some of the targets which are right now already mentioned in the SDGs. It will include some of the parameters which are being captured by the ESG. So a lot of the funding landscape, even though these medium and small enterprises are not mandated to follow ESG reporting, but the funding landscape is moving in such a way that if they follow, they gain the trust that we talked about. Right? Which is absolutely critical today to build a stronger customer base. And two, they gain finance because finance is moving to that end, right? And those are two important leverages that we have today as MBA students to shift the context, to shift the ground, right? One amazing example, and I'll stop after this, is there is this campaign that started in Indonesia, and it has now taken over the world, that talks about how do I include climate and social responsibilities in my JDs at work, right? So if I am an accountant, right, what would be some of the things in my JD that talks about environment and social responsibility, right? And that's how both institutionally, individually, and professionally, the world is discovering new ways of furthering the whole idea of commitment for equity, right? And ESG is one part of it in the context of the larger system that we are talking about, right? Bottom line, listen to the world, because if we listen today, we will be able to address some of the inequities, we will be able to address some of the crisis, which is going to come up for us in 2030 and 2050. And what I'm referring to is IPCC data and scenarios, which have been much publicized recently. So, those are some of the references, reports, and things that I would like you to refer to as you're building your knowledge in the space of ESG and looking at what are the career opportunities. I'll stop here and open for questions.
Thank you, Aruna. This had been really wonderful presentation. The most important takeaway from your presentation is that we need to work towards behavioral changes. It has to come from inside. It's not something that can be imposed on us. Whether we like or we don't like, ESG is a mandatory thing to be done because we want to live, because we want to survive. We don't have second chances. And it is not just about ticking certain boxes or filling certain data. We have evidence that proves that in case we are committed, we build trust, we do better business. Ultimately, we earn profits out of it. So yes, we need to transform the world. For the benefit of the students and to relate how this whole discussion is going to be beneficial for them, I would like to give a small presentation on looking at ESG from SDG lens. So this small 5-6 slides where I would just like to relate the role of management institutions and the future aspects that these students need to understand why this whole topic is important for them. I would just like to give this small presentation. I'll just try to share. Just bear with me, please. Share.
The share option is at the end on the top.
Yeah, I saw the share option. Yeah, I'm just trying. My internet doesn't seem to be very stable today. If I look at this,
ma'am, Malik ma'am, you may switch off your video. That way we'll get some bandwidth to present, right?
Oh, yes, I'll do that. Thank you so much. Is the slide visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay.
Ma'am,
so
you may put it. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So it is just a small attempt to relate ESG to SDG, which is everyone's concern, and see how this is important for us. So Sustainable Development Goals, as we know from MDG's 3 Ps, we have now moved to the 5 Ps of people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnership, and everything put together is in SDGs as well as ESG. These are the 5 P we are talking about, and this is also the background for ESG's 3 parameters. We talk about people to ensure healthy lives, knowledge and inclusion. We talk about dignity to end poor and fight inequality, which is the biggest concern in today's time. We talk about prosperity to grow strong, inclusive and transformative economy. We need to take care of the planet, our ecosystem and societies for our children. We need participations and justice for all. This is how ESG is talking about SDGs. Now, when we talk about E, that is environment, we are actually talking about SDG 7, 12, 13, and 15, which is all about environment, affordable and clean energy. We're talking about responsible consumption and responsible production. We're talking about climate action and also life underwater, life above water. When we talk about social, we are actually talking about SDG 3, 4, 5, 8, 9, 10, and 11. And when we talk about governance, we are covering SDG 9 and 17. Broadly speaking, this is how the ESG framework is related to SDGs. So if you look at it, all 17 SDGs somewhere get some kind of contribution in case the organization contributes focus on their ESGs. So ESG commitment is not just about building profits, it's about transforming the whole society. The basic difference between ESG and SDG is there is no global definition or global framework. We have multiple framework. If you look at BRSR framework for ESG reporting, we have a 35-page document which need to provide data related to various segments in this. And we also know that there are so many regulatory authorities which require data on ESG. If you look at SDGs, these have more clearly defined indicators and metadata structures and everything. But then it is bigger concern as compared to ESG. When we look at what management students need to understand, they have to be taught circular economy. The shift from the straight economy that had been taught till now in management institutions or as part of management education needs to be completely replaced by the concept of circular economy. This automatically has ESG inherently in it. In case we start teaching the students about circular economy, we are already teaching them about ESG, being responsible. Dr. Samsher mentioned about the subprime crisis in 2008, where the US banks just shattered on one fine morning. But all that has got to do with, and at that point of time also, management education and ethical decision making had been questioned a lot. And this is exactly that. We need to make responsible managers, because they are the future decision makers. They are the one who would be deciding what business to be done and what business decisions to be taken. In case we make them aware about what wrong decisions we have taken and that had led to us depending on ESG and SDGs for betterment of the world, so that cycle has to be broken. This is how transformative education had to focus on. When we talk about education as SDG goal 4, it had to talk about personal well-being, societal well-being, and planet well-being. So our management institutions, every institution need to focus on these 3 parameters and ensure that the educational institute also take care of these things and not just on giving degrees. Teaching and learning had to take into consideration the 21st century transformative learning framework. We need to start thinking about teaching creativity, moving out of that stress management, which had been always the highlight of our education system. We need to again start focusing on emotional intelligence, relationship building, personal reflection, self-knowledge. We need to teach the students about diverse thinking, communication, and collaborations. Only then they would be able to do better work. Yeah, so this was a small attempt to relate ESG with SDGs and how management institution and every person individually can also contribute towards ESGs and SDGs. We have reached the time limit, and now I think we can have the floor open for questions and we can have discussions for next 15-20 minutes. Any questions the students have? I
have a question from Aman sir. Because is ESG undermining your company's competitiveness?
So sorry, this is my question for me.
Yes, sir.
Can you repeat the question? Can you please, because the voice is not that clear.
Is ESG undermining your company's competitiveness?
No, I don't think so. See, I tell you about, our organization. We are a US MNC with a presence in over 150 countries, right? With a turnover of around $46 billion, right? So we employ more than a few lakhs of, so the point is, so I think this is, I think I would say this is not undermining, related to undermining or, anything like that. I think this is for purpose, now, which I completely agree with Ms. Pandey on this. I think the brands are thinking, let us deliver whatever we wish to with a purpose. The brands with purpose. I think that is something which is very critical for any organization for their growth in coming future. And I also agree to some extent, rather to great extent, with Ms. Pandey, the points which she has spoken on the making the supply chain, right, uh, getting the local players involved, right? The point here is, when we think about a brand with a purpose, all these things, irrespective of regulatory requirement, irrespective of other which are legal requirements, which may be Indian origin, which may be US origin, right? So those all become secondary, right? So I will say, I will again emphasize on this, right? The most important aspect is whatever we do as an organization, as a citizen of India, we should do with purpose, right? And that purpose, I think, is very well defined by ESG, right? And all of us that role to play. And I again would emphasize, and this is a journey, this is start of a journey. I think all of us are learning in a learning phase as an organization, as an academic institute, as a student. And then the best part is, I think I still consider myself as a student because I am eager to learn. So I'm eager to learn from everybody over here. I'm eager to learn from even the MBA students who may be the backbone of the whole ESG, considering the finance involvement, considering the various strategies they may develop in connection with the ESG. As a scientist, we are very slow people, right? We develop strategies over the years, but professionals like MBA students and all, I think a lot of stuff is there on their backbones, right? I think, and I really congratulate the academic institute to arrange this. And then I think again ending up this discussion from my end, I think this is the purpose, which is the most important aspect, for our brand, and it should be for every individual citizen of the country.
Sir, if you allow me,
I would just,
can hear me. I have a question to make.
I just wanted
I have
to
a question for these. Yeah.
I just wanted to add a little bit to what Dr. Gupta was speaking. A wonderful resource that all of you must look at is this research which was done by MacArthur Foundation. And MacArthur Foundation actually chose 3 large industries: transport, energy, and agriculture. Right, agriculture and allied industry. And they talked about something which is similar but a little more advanced than what Dr. Malik shared in terms of circular economy. I'm talking about regenerative economy. So the whole idea is that, if we keep moving existing resources in circularity, it's not enough anymore, because we need to generate value to perpetuate as a human society. Right? And that's where regeneration comes in. And regenerative economy, actually the principles of regenerative economy are beautifully represented in the SDGs and ESG. And they show you by research, using data, that, in all these 3 industries, the companies have a profit margin which is more than 30% if they shift their practices.
I'll just add one quick example here for everybody's benefit. I think we very closely work with Ministry of Health, FSSAI, as well as Ministry of Petroleum, right? And I think with the Indian Oil and all other companies, big PSUs, and there has been a mechanism where cooking oil is now being discarded. Cooking oil is now being used to manufacture biodiesel. I think it's a great win. We are, regenerating that. That's what Ms. Pandey is talking about. We are regenerating sources of energy, right? Sources of energy. This is a classical example, right? And we have multiple. I think the R&D team of Indian Oil and others, government within the government machinery, they are working so hard to have multiple these examples. But unfortunately, all these take a lot of effort, right? And years to come, maybe 10 years, 5 years, again will stretch, all. And I keep on citing these examples just to just to create curiosity and eagerness among the students, so they are keen and highly motivated. And I tell you, as of now, if you do get those kind of profiles, they're highly paid jobs, right? And please keep in mind. And again, I want to add one more thing into this. It now, we all, of us know that there are some noble professions where you earn and you do society benefit to the society, like doctors, scientists, etc. But I think this is going to be the one of the most significant noble professions in coming time, right? So I will sincerely and urge to the students, please, try to, talk to any one of us, right, within your organization, with us from industry, and we will help you to support, how you should shape your careers, right? Thank you.
Next question, please.
I have a question to make to Dr. Gupta and Ms. Pandey, Aruna Pandey, madam, as well. Sir, madam, you both talked about capex investments, and I just want to understand how a say mid-cap company or a small cap company, I mean, they can make environmentally sound long-term capex decisions. I mean, capex decisions are irreversible, right? How can an environmentally sound, sustainable financial decision can be made? Like, to start with, a mid-cap company where they can invest, and we can call that decision a long-term capex, but an environmentally and sound and sustainable decision. So, what type of endeavors these companies should make? These are the small companies that I'm talking about, or a mid-cap company.
So, Ms. Pandey, should I go first?
Yes, please.
Okay, so thank you for that question. I have two examples for you to share, right? One is, let us take the example of electric bikes, which, electric vehicles. This is, see, the cost of petrol you use is 4 to 5 times higher versus the cost of running of a electric vehicle, right? And there are stats around it. I did work on that, and if you have an electric vehicle in 2 to 3 years, the organization is able to get it neutralized, the ROI, which we say the return of an investment. This is one part, right? Second part is solar panels, right? In India, solar panel is one of the most important, especially in those areas, where you have ample sunlight, right? And again, in the 3 4 years time, one is able in a position to get the ROI, right? So these are the basic. And then water harvesting is third example which I wanted to share with you. Fourth example I have already shared, which is the generation of biodiesel from the used cooking oils, right? So these are the four aspects, right? Even a small industry, or a, even in fact, these are parameters we should also try to use at our homes, right? So this is not a big investment. At least we should target 40 to 50% of energy consumption using solar panel or wind energy wherever applicable, right? So these are my examples. Over to you, Pandey ma'am.
Just wanted to add, if we are looking at capex costs, right? The externalities which have never been considered as a fallout of capex cost that we incur is the social costs, right? So say, for example, if I'm building an office, right? The whole understanding that environmentally friendly technologies are going to be more expensive for us to build an infrastructure is the biggest myth in today's world, right? So it's not expensive to adopt, environment-friendly infrastructure just because of the kind of returns that Dr. Gupta was mentioning. The social cost, on the other hand, is that with a better environment to work in, where the employees also feel that they are making a contribution which is purposeful, right? Remember, as social animals, we all want purpose. We all want our mojo. We all want to see that we are doing good. That makes you feel good. That makes you perform better, right? So even in terms of people and their performance, overall environment, overall cultures of organizations, it has led to higher returns for companies, including retention, right? So the way you design your capex just not has an effect on environmental costs, right? It also has effect on how you are looking at your social costs. Right? So just remember that we tend to wear blinkers, right, and say that now a mid-cap company has to shift. That means more money, more investment, right? But think of technology today. We are doing this event online. Now imagine the kind of investment it would have taken us if we all said, oh no, we all need to be there physically present, right? You would need to at least have a venue. Right? So if you look at mid-cap and small companies, they're already moving to use of more and more virtual environments with a component of hybrid interactions so that they're able to maintain social relationships. Right? So in today's world where technology has progressed far more and we have a better understanding of what is ecological friendly, it's not very expensive to be responsible.
Thank you. Thank you for answering that. Dr. Aman and Aruna for this wonderful answer. I would just like to add one more point to it. The biggest hurdle is not the monetary cost. The biggest hurdle is the behavioral changes that are required. Even when we look at SDGs or ESG, or for that matter, anything that is good, we do not want to change our behavior of consumption. So my biggest concern during our discussion was when we talk about SDGs, we had 8 MDGs and then we moved to 17 SDGs and we have a target till 2030. What after that? So from 8 we have moved to 30 and after that we would move to, let's say, another 40. But how long are we going to continue like this? So today, first we started with CSR, then today we are at ESG. Tomorrow we may have another framework for it. But what we are actually trying to attain is a behavioral change, being responsible for what we do and taking care of the environment because we do not have a choice. So that is the biggest problem here. It is never money, it is never resources, it is never anything else. It's all mental blocks and behavioral changes, which we need to target. Next question, please.
Just would like to mention here, ma'am, Rajeshwari ma'am, your input was again a value addition to it. And ma'am, just would like to state here that I was a student of yours in MSI 2007 batch, so it's good to see you here. And you have given some valuable input. Thank you so much.
Bless you, my kid.
Kamlesh, you can go ahead with your question, please.
Sir, my question is the World Bank or any other international organization providing any kind of technical or financial assistance to lower income countries in making and implementing ESG?
I would like to take this question. I think World Bank, whatever project World Bank support, every World Bank project to have ESG approvals. I can talk about, I can give you one example about the electricity project, which is being currently being managed at Uttarakhand. And we did a case study on that project, and that project also had the ESG guidelines, and it had to be stalled in between because although everything else was taking place properly, but the social factor which were mentioned, the replacement damage that has to be paid or compensation that was supposed to be paid, there were some issues with that. So whatever project that World Bank would sponsor, no project would ever be sponsored without ESG compliance. So World Bank, United Nations agencies, and every financial agency today they also have a social face to show. They also have institutional branding to show. And their commitment towards UN goals and their commitment towards environment has to be visible in their actions as well. So there is no project I can say where there can be greenwashing, definitely, but there cannot be a project sponsored where you have an evidence that ESG is not being taken care of. It is not viable in today's time.
Just to add to that, if you look at the World Bank Sustainable Finance Initiative, they are actually facilitating right now green, blue, and social bond markets. Right? And these bond markets are the new spaces which are coming up, which allows for companies to participate in market transactions, and financing by adhering to ESG advisory, right? Which is what Dr. Malik was also referring to, right? So there is a parallel piece which is happening in terms of designing a certain kind of a market, designing a certain kind of an investment ecosystem, so that ESG becomes one of the mandatory pieces to access it, right? So it's not direct funding so that you are able to do capacity building for ESG in your company, right? So there's no direct funding for that, but there is advisory services, and there's a market which has been created, which is an incentive for companies to invest in building capacities.
And I would like to add one more point to it for the students of management who are interested in building career in ESG. There is a free course by World Bank where they can get the certification for ESG framework. So you can enroll for it and you can complete that course. And I think if in case you want a verifiable certificate, there'll be certain charges. Otherwise, there is a free certificate also for ESG from World Bank. So the students can enroll for it and they can have the basic qualification required in order to add on to their MBA degrees.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am.
Deepika Dikshit, please go ahead with your question.
Yeah. So my question is, can you please give us a few examples of industry where ESG is being implemented, and any of you can answer this question.
I can take that.
Yes.
So,
yes.
The funny thing about SDGs is how we report on it, right? And the current reporting structure concentrates on government reporting, right? And there is very little in formal industry or civil society reporting, which helps us understand where are we vis-a-vis the targets, right? And that's because our data and monitoring systems are structured in a certain way. Yeah. And so with some of these reporting initiatives which are being introduced, the regulatory frameworks that are being introduced, we will now increasingly see how are they contributing to the targets of SDGs. So you will be able to do much direct appropriation, right, as to this is the contribution of this industry. Having said that, if you look at all CSR work that's happening today, every single company says that these are the SDGs that we are contributing to, right? So there's no tangible way to calculate how much are we contributing, right? But there is an intangible understanding that by funding certain kind of CSR projects, I'm contributing to goals so and so and so, right? Similarly, as an academic institution, because of education being imparted, the institution is contributing to SDGs so and so. But does this get accounted for when it comes to national reporting? Not as much, right? So it's more of a data infrastructure gap rather than the intention or activity that's happening. The hope is that because at a country level, we look at broad set of parameters, some of these changes that we are doing at our level will start showing up in the larger data ecosystem, right? But there will be a lag and there will be no direct appropriation.
This,
Thank you.
I think, yeah. See,
Miss
quantitative.
Varsha. Oh, okay, ma'am, please go ahead.
Sorry, no, I just wanted to add the obsession with quantitative data had in certain ways contributed to so many problems that we face in as an economy today. But at the same time, unless and until it is measured, it cannot be improved. We understand that as well. But we have to start valuing the qualitative aspects of contributions. Even for SDGs, the reporting, just to make it evidence-based, we have to quantify it and present it as a concrete proof. And because it has to adhere to certain norms, rules, and regulations, so if we look at that, it becomes more reliable. But again, there is a huge gap in qualitative research and qualitative acceptance, the contribution of qualitative impact that we have. So we need to do. It's something like, I would like to touch the pain point, NAC accreditation and inspection that we have in our management education institutes. The amount of data we collect and the way we present it becomes a pain point rather than a good benchmark. So, but then if we start taking it in a proactive way, we first go through what the NEC parameters are, and then accordingly we design our annual plan, we would be in a much better shape. But things are more of a piecemeal changes and not a cohesive and holistic changes. That's the whole problem here. Next question, please. Sorry for.
Ma'am, Dr. Malik, I'll just like to add one point. I think there seems an opportunity for PhD in management studies, where students can focus and come up with hypothesis, right? And because when we wish to move from qualitative to quantitative data, I think we need to research a lot, right? That's what. So I would request and urge the students to also think on those tracks, because if we do follow, at least 5% of students should think on those tracks. I think see, academics is something is never ending knowledge process, right? And I have been so keen for academics. Unfortunately, I work in the industry, right? But then I keep on putting up publications, attending lectures as a student as well as a speaker. So I will urge, right, all the students to make a note, right? Have some research in this domain as well, right? I think that would be good for the nation. Thank you.
Yes. Next question, please. Thank you.
Varsha, you can have your question, please.
Ma'am, my question is that we all know that India aspires to be a developed country by 2047. But how can this ESG and its implementation help in achieving this goal?
Okay, I'll take this. Varsha, we will be a developed nation in whatever year, but there has to be a tomorrow for that. And if we don't do anything about SDGs today or ESG today, there is not likely to be a tomorrow. The way climate is changing, the way natural calamities are happening around us, the way things are changing, you must have witnessed so much climate change around you. So you can very well relate. And ethical, responsible production, consumption, in case we do not have that in our behavior, it doesn't matter. There are countries which are already developed countries, even they have to come back to ESG, and they also have to follow ESG. It's not about whether we want to do about ESG or not. So in case I think we focus on ESG, we can be developed even before 2047.
Varsha, I have a question for you in answer to your question. And that's the favorite thing of the teachers, by the way. So, I would really urge you to ask that, given the discussion today, given the way the world is moving, given what is happening today in, say, for example, most most developed places like New York and San Francisco due to wildfires, people not being able to breathe, right? Given all this context, do you think that the understanding of what is developed is going to shift in the next few years?
True.
And if it is going to shift, then what is the role of ESG and where will that get us as a country? Right? So think about it, ponder, and then you'll have your answers in terms of new careers, new frameworks, new understanding of development, which is increasingly making into the international forum and now also in India.
I think Dr. Pandit, thanks for that point. I had a similar thought process. I think we need to understand the definition of being developed nation, and there is dynamics involved in that. And we should ask, as a developed nation, what all we need. I think if we ask honestly, I think one of the top priority would be environment, social, and governance. All these parameters of ESG are going to definitely contribute for being India as a developed country in coming future soon.
So may I have the privilege to ask the last question? If there is no other question. Okay. My question is slightly different. My question is, see, when we talk about the consumption on the surface, for example, we can have e-vehicles and other things. How about air travel? What is the alternative for the air travel, which is also causing so much emission and it's polluting the environments? So what is the alternative?
Dr. Singh, let me take this up. You know, if you ask me honestly, I think put that air travel in the scope 3 of emissions, and you are very absolutely correct on this. You know, and what recommendation I have given to my organization on this, let us restrict our air travel to an extent where we all can. There I see a significant reduction in global travel, where most of the calls are now being taken up virtually, right? At least there is a 70% reduction in the global travel, right? And even I would say now we have devised a technology where we would be in a position to people work from India, even if they are on roles of US or Canada. You're getting my point. So I think the only one of the best thing we could get from COVID was this electronic platform, right? So I think that's my submission on your question.
Thank you so much, but I have a slightly related information.
One of improvement is there. Now drones started for journal movement. So I think from petrol to people are going on in remote and all. So that's a solution of aeroplanes, or we can say the air flights are going to reduce through that. Because technology is coming and things are moving forward. So that's also a better solution and people are getting that.
I think we'll have to also wait for teleporting technology to get advanced. So after that, I think we will not require air travel. So there'll be teleporting for us. But more than anything else, I think the whole story lies in responsible consumption. How much of it is required, how much of it can be avoided. Everything cannot be avoided, but yes, wherever it can be avoided, we need to be open for exploring other options, not just like this virtual platform. So something like this can help. You were adding something, sir.
Yeah, I was adding that recently the France has said that they are going to ban the air travel if the timing is less than 2.5 hours. So they were promoting the travel by road or travel by train so that the air emission is reduced. So is it feasible for all other countries to follow similar things?
I think it is just a matter of commitment. Again, a behavioral change. I remember when we had this COP at Glasgow. People were flying there to attend that in chartered planes, and they were all talking about carbon footprints and environment and climate change, and that shows their commitment and responsibility. So ultimately, it is about definition of consumption, responsible consumption. Yes, ma'am, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I'm extending it after the last question. So I'm really sorry to the audience and to the dignitaries here. But this is really important. Basically, this is an information and it's not a question. I would like to have your opinion on this. We're talking about like restricting the air travel or restricting the petrol-driven vehicles. But what about war weapons? Like Global Forum, they are talking about ESG. We all are talking about environment and climate safe business processes. But at the end of the day, we are again going towards like practicing and having collaborative war practices or a kind of demo of different war weapons. And then we can't ignore Ukraine-Russia war. And then there are few which are actually on the verge of breaking. So just an opinion on this. I understand this is a global issue, and again, I go by what Malik ma'am is saying. It needs a behavioral change from individual as well as from the agencies. So your opinion is, I solicit your opinion on this from all three panelists. Thank you.
Aruna, Dr. Aruna, you can go first, please.
So thank you for asking that. I think it's a very important question as to where are we moving geopolitically, right? And how does it affect everything else that we're doing? And I feel that, when it comes to modes of travel, when it comes to wars, they're all manifestations of problems which are much deeper. Right? And to understand, say, for example, the whole, slogan for Egypt when Egypt went through turmoil was bread and water. It wasn't war, just for the sake of war, right? People walked out because the country had gone through years and decades of drought. There were sanctions, legal sanctions, which were put on Egypt for import of wheat, and wheat being one of the main staple foods. Right? Similarly, if you look at the Ukraine war, it's not coming from a space of, power play between Ukraine and Russia. Right? The reasons are much more deep-rooted when it comes to ownership of certain kinds of resources. True for Afghanistan. So all wars, when we look at weapons of mass destruction, show of muscle and power, you have people feeling happy about air travel because they are able to access a certain kind of an infrastructure, right? It's all coming from a certain understanding, which is very, very superficial. You can't stop war if you stop weapons of mass destruction. You have to stop war, right? If you promote self-sufficiency of a certain kind, right? You can stop air travel if you promote certain kind of an institutional environment, certain ways of working, right? In the global economy, which allows you not to need that facility, right? And so really, at the heart of it, the solutions are really about how are we structuring our society. It's not about reducing air travel. It's not about, looking at destroying weapons of mass destruction. No, it's not about that at all, right? I mean, best example for all of us is Delhi, right? Odd and even. Great, right? But what happens in the long term? We are still struggling to breathe. Just this year, it's just a few months in, and we have 9 lakh deaths in Delhi because of air pollution. Right? So where are the restrictions getting us? Where are the regulations getting us? unless we change some of the basic infrastructure in the way we structure ourselves, the way we structure our society. And because we are in the context of an academic institution, one very good example is that if today we have to seek UGC's approval for a university, what is the first thing that they ask for? Do you have a big piece of land? Do you have a big campus, right, where you have certain kind of infrastructures? Those are eligibility criteria, right? Now, unless we shift that criteria, can we talk about collaborative campuses between colleges? Right? Can that become the norm? Shared infrastructure, shared capex, right? Use of technology in teaching, and which is what the new education policy is talking about, right? So unless we shift the ground of how do we design our society and work, it's very difficult to change surface level things, right? Otherwise, we are doing gap fixing. Restricting travel, odd and even days, saying that, yes, Ukraine war is very bad. We should actually tell Russia that you have to back off, right? But both of them will keep flexing powers unless we address the core issues. And in this context, I would really, request the university to please organize something which many people around the world, including those from India, have championed, which is talking about a 21st century economy paradigm, right? And what does that paradigm look like? Regenerative economics is an offshoot of it. Donut economics is an offshoot of it. Circularity is an offshoot of it. So the way we teach economics today to our students need to change. And once we change that, they will have much better understanding of these manifestations and how do they engage with it, or we engage with it as faculty members. I'll stop here.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you. I would just like to add one more point. The problem is that our education system had been a very narrow approached. So somebody who get educated in a village do not even consider village livable anymore. That had been the whole concept of education system. If I have excellent education, I don't even consider India livable anymore. I would go for some better greener pastures. So if you look at that, it's not the problem of brain drain. It is about how the brain we wired through that education system. So again, it boils down to understanding that when we talk about the transformation of the world through SDGs or ESG, transformation of business through ESG, it has to be holistic. It has to take care of people. It has to take care of planet. It has to take care of prosperity, partnership. And the core of all this is peace. Unless and until there is peace, inequality is reduced and things are shared properly among everyone. Again, through controlling greed, responsible production, responsible consumption, only then it is possible to actually reduce this kind of negative things around us. Otherwise, it's gonna be the same gloomy situation. One war here, one war there. Somehow one get controlled, and then there is a firefighting somewhere else going. So all that needs to be. We again have to go back to the roots, the basic thing.
Ms. Pandey, please go ahead.
I just, it just flashed two sentences that sums it all up for me. And I go back to the values: equity, liberty, justice, right? There's a very famous saying that justice is nothing but love in public. Right? Now, in the Ukraine war context, if we have to have justice, how will love for Ukraine and love for Russia and love for everybody who is involved look like? Will it look like sanctions? No. Right? So, if you go back to, I think one good compass for us to judge, understand, and say, what is it that we do next, is going back to some of the core values that we are talking about. And that really tells us, we do this all the time. I mean, as teachers, we do it in the universities. When we start caring for students, we know exactly how to educate them. No amount of our teacher training is going to tell us how to educate them unless we start coming from a space of love and care, right? And that's true for everything that Dr. Malik is talking about.
Yes, Dr. Gupta, you were saying something.
So I think a lot of discussion we had on this point, but I think my understanding is very simple on this. I think what we are supposed to do is, we all are, should be a better individual, right? Better citizen of the country, right? A better person, and a better person at our hearts, develop empathy for others. I think these things were very grassrooted in our, in our culture. Now, but moving ahead, as we have moved to more Western world, right? These all things have been, diluted, may have diluted. So now the problem is yoga was always there, Ayurveda was always there. When it went to US, became yoga and Ayurveda came back, then all of us are accepting that. I think that is the problem, right? I think we have a very rich culture. Now people are talking about heart styles and all those reports, mental health and all these things are so many after like thousands of years, prior to this have been, very clearly defined. And, I think till the time we become a good individual, a good citizen of the country, have empathy for others, and that I think some aspects of that are definitely taken care by the social, because social part of the ESG talks about, community talks about how you should develop the, even if they are your competitors, you have to survive. Even the biological sciences also says there should be a competition, but one should also be in position to compete and live together. Survival for fittest is always there, but a healthy competition, live and let others live attitude, develop empathy for others. Till the time we have those, behavioral, aspects developed within ourselves, and that is, I think, each and every one of us has that moral responsibility, right? If we have those, I think the world is definitely going to be better, livable place. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gupta. We have taken a lot of extra time, and I hope it's okay with the organizers.
As a parting gift, I would like to make an offering for the university. I'm part of an international group called the WISE Network. And the WISE Network really talks about how do we build pedagogies of well-being in universities. It is led by Stanford and University of Virginia as core partners. And from India, we have many universities as well. So if you would like to explore that, I'll be happy to connect and get you on board. We always had a saying earlier, Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina. From that, we moved on to not everybody can be happy. And now we are going back to equity for all, right? So that really sums it up when it comes to ESG, right? It's an international framework, but it actually is coming from our own cultures of being and doing. And that's what we need to understand.
Thank you so very much, Aruna ma'am. We are feeling really, really honored to get this offer, and surely will be coming back to you after this session, and would like to explore this possibility for our college also. Malik ma'am, it's always a pleasure. Like I heard you before, and right now we know personally each other. This is a pleasure listening to you on this topic again. Gupta sir, the kind of energy you brought in this panel, it's unmatchable. So of course we'll be going ahead with a very formal kind of appreciation and vote of thanks from one of our conveners. But just with my question, one last line, because this is really, really bothering me a lot. It's not about one war. It's not about one border disturbance. It's more of these superpowers. They are talking at one platform about climate, about weather, about having some societal interest, and on the other part, they are creating market for all these weapons. They are having combined war practices. So this is an irony, and we as an intellectuals can have the right. We know we always say the power of pen is stronger than any weapon. So we have that power, and that's why this is a right platform to actually make people aware that we can change. We can change it by changing our mindset and changing the mindset at the societal level, at the mass level. So this is my last line. I was actually craving to speak up this line, and thank you so much for giving me this privilege. Over to you, Malik ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you. And I personally feel, I think as management institution, or for that matter, as educational institutions, we have the bigger responsibility and the biggest power in our hand. I look at SDGs as a failure of previous generation rather than as a framework that has been put forward as a very intellectual thing. So being an SDG advocate, I personally look at it as a failure of responsible decision making by previous generations. And if we raise our young students as the responsible citizens of tomorrow, I think we would correct it to a certain extent and also do our duty as teachers and as parents properly. So it's wonderful that you have organized this topic on a very this conclave on a very relevant topic and have ignited the minds of students to think about environment, social and governance responsibility during their professional decisions making tomorrow. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, panelists, for a wonderful session. Dr. Aruna Pandey, it's pleasure meeting you, and Dr. Raman Gupta. I really enjoyed being with both of you in the panel. And thank you, my colleagues from Bcips, and thank you, ma'am, once again for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Beb. It's a really pleasure to have you here with us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rajeshwari Dayya Malik ma'am, for moderating this discussion so well, and the panelists for your valuable words and expertise. It was a very enlightening panel discussion, providing all the participants with a bulk of valuable information regarding ESG and SDGs. Due to an urgent company meeting, Mr. Manoj Kumar Shah could not join us. We regret his absence here and hope that he can join us in future. There is a request for you all. I request you all to kindly fill the feedback form through the link provided in the chat box as well as in the WhatsApp group, so that the certificates can be issued and we can get your feedbacks too regarding the discussions and the session.
Thank you, everyone, and all the best to the students, right? And anytime, you wish to, any of the students wish to reach me out, you can maybe get in touch with Dr. Shamsher Singh. He has my coordinates. I will be more than happy to interact with you. Though I'm not a management expert, but definitely I would be help you whatever context I would be in a position to. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Now to express our gratitude to all the esteemed speakers and participants, we would like to invite Mr. Jayant Sanyal, the event coordinator, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you very much. I am audible, I hope.
Yes, you are.
Yes,
sir. Okay. Thank you. So every beginning culminates in its ending. Here we are standing at the end of the second and last phase of this management conclave on environmental social governance as a value creator for Indian ecosystem. This stage of the conclave, featuring a panel discussion on ESG, saw an engaging and insightful discussion among the learned panelists. The discussion was very skillfully moderated by Dr. Rajeshwari Dayya Malik by raising the right kind of questions like defining ESG and other things, energized our panelists, including our moderator herself, to share their valuable insights, opinions, and perspectives on ESG and its increasing relevance for the industry. I sincerely thank Dr. Rajeshwari Dayya Malik for so beautifully moderating this session for the audience present here and emphasizing on the behavioral change in her address. I would like to take this opportunity to thank our learned and esteemed Dr. Aman Gupta, and Dr. Aruna Pandey for enlightening the audience about ESG, its growing role in the industry, need for systemic design changes through their detailed presentation, and patiently answering the queries from our students and faculty. I sincerely express the hope that their contribution in this discussion would work as a catalyst in motivating our students and the faculty to develop better understanding of ESG and circular economy. No event can be a success without the behind-the-scenes contribution of a management, faculty, staff, and students. I would be found wanting in my duties if at this juncture I fail to acknowledge the guidance and support of Sri Vipul Gupta ji, our Vice Chairman, Dr. Aparna Mishra, our Director, who through a consistent encouragement and vital opinions have helped us make this event a reality. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Dr. Shamsher Singh, sir, whose positive energy, enthusiasm, and passion in every task of this conclave, ranging from finding out and contacting potential resource persons to coordinating with his fellow team members, Ms. Parki Tandon, and the others involved with this. I thank each and every volunteer for their consistent support. I thank our student volunteers who deserve a lot of appreciation and a big thank you for their efforts in successfully staging this conclave. Our anchors, Ishita and Samriddhi, our technical team comprising of Bal Mukund, Piyush, Ankit, Kamlesh, not to forget Tarandeep Kaur, Zubeda, Deepika, Bhagya, Nikita, Shubham, and Varsha for providing their support to the conclave committee through their consistent efforts. I thank the system administrator, Mr. Pankaj Kumar, for ensuring that there were no bandwidth and connectivity issues during the event. In the end, I thank the audience for their gracious presence, and I look forward to another such event in future. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir, and all the speakers. It was indeed an interactive and informative session, and all the participants for being a part of this session. We hope it was an informative and interesting session for you all. You all have filled the feedback form and provided in the chat box. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. It was indeed a pleasure to have you all today with us.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Take care. Bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much.